Chapter 698. When Xiao Su's words fell, the person in front of him was already in a daze. Someone had once told him that in a person's life, if he could find something that made him stubborn and willing to risk his life, then he wouldn't have wasted his time in this world. So whether it was his imperial father, his hidden enemies, the court officials, or the common people, they all thought that he cared about power and profit. But no one knew that his hands were covered in blood and he actually had no desires that no one believed. At least before he met the little fellow, he was just wasting time waiting to be assassinated, fall seriously ill, or be lucky enough to die at the end of his life. However, after a person suddenly appeared in his life, he realized that the days of waiting for death were not so difficult. It could be said that he felt that he was truly living in this world 5 years ago and was no longer a numb walking corpse. It could be said that it was the little fellow that allowed him to be reborn and understand the meaning of life. But if he wanted her to understand, it would take a bit of time, but he wasn't in a rush. The carriage was moving very slowly and the road back to the bank was very long. He had enough time to wait for her. Living, this life was very long, he still had a lot of time for her to understand. But before that, he would use all his strength to love her and cherish her. No one would dare hurt her. So, as if the master and servant were connected, the carriage driven by Huo Ling was moving forward at the speed of a turtle that would make one's jaw drop. It was a pity that Huo Ling didn't have that kind of ability, but his master had told him to do so before he got on the carriage. Moreover, after the two of them entered, the heavy curtain fell and the sound inside couldn't be heard at all. Adding in the noise on the road, the words inside were drowned out. Compared to the hustle and bustle outside, the inside of the car was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. You mean that your hobby is raising pets and I was lucky enough to enter your eyes and be raised as a pet? She suddenly remembered Higashio Motetsu's words. Although it wasn't believable before, it was strangely fitting now. Xiao Su felt that he had lost to her ability to understand. But after seeing her forced smile, Xiao Su warned himself not to be impatient. I don't have a habit of raising pets. He answered earnestly. That's not right. Daddy gave me a few goldfish before, and I often forget to feed them. You're the one taking care of them. Chu Qingyan looked at her in confusion. Because you're the one who raised it. If it dies, you'll be sad. I'm just loving you because I love you. With the frank analysis of his heart earlier, Xiao Su was completely used to it when he said those words. Love me, love my dog. Chu Qingyan felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. These words actually came out of the big ice cube's mouth. It was as if it was snowing in June and the sky was raining red. But his eyes were so sincere that there was nothing fake about it. Although she was slow, she was not hopelessly stupid. This scene reminded her of her high school or university days when she saw a girl being confessed to by a man at the staircase. However, was this possible? The question hidden in her heart suddenly surfaced in her mind. She pursed her lips as an inexplicable courage suddenly welled up in her heart. Whether it was life or death, whether it was hope or destruction, she did not care. Big Ice Cube, let me ask you a very serious question. You have to answer honestly. Xiao Su had always been very serious when he told her that he would not lie to her. She felt that she was being ridiculous for asking this question. It was not like she did not know the Big Ice Cube. He disdained lying and deceiving people. Of course, it was a different story when it came to scheming. From the capital to the north, then to Liancheng, and finally to Jiangnan, in these 5 years. When she spoke before, she didn't even dare to meet his eyes. But when she spoke to hear, she didn't know where a burst of courage came from. Then, she met the pair of black eyes in front of her that were as unfathomable as the boundless night sky but also made her yearn for them. What am I in your heart? When she mustered up the courage to say the last sentence, she realized that she had used up the last bit of her strength and slowly lowered her eyes. She did not know why she was so insistent on this answer, but she was not willing to be abandoned by him in the future. This is the second time you've asked me this question. Chu Qingyan looked up in shock. The second time. Knowing her doubts, Xiaosu explained, "You were drunk that night. It was the first time, but I didn't tell you the answer." "What about now?" She actually did not know that she would talk nonsense when she was drunk. No wonder people said that the truth was revealed when they were drunk. It was indeed true. However, if Chu Qingyan knew that she not only talked nonsense when she was drunk, but also did something even bolder, she would probably be petrified. "What answer do you want?" he asked her. This was also what he wanted to ask. "Is the answer you want the same as the one I'm going to give you later?" Chu Qingyan's eyes dimmed slightly when she heard this. "I don't know the answer I want, but I think I know your answer." Facing the person she admired, even if Chu Qingyan did not understand her own feelings, she was not confident. Her heart was tightly entangled with anxiety. "Oh. Tell me about it." Xiaosu did not think that it would be a good answer. "Is it because my appearance made up for the lack of family in your life, so you treat me as your sister?" Everyone said that the big ice cube doted on her. Of course, she knew that, but this kind of doting was really a bit like a sibling's relationship. She subconsciously rejected it. As expected, she was still brooding over what she said in the study that day. The more Chu Qingyan thought about it, the more certain she was that this was the answer. She felt even more aggrieved. However, at this moment, she felt her chin being gently lifted by a force. Before she could react to what was going on, a black shadow covered her. In front of her widened eyes, a face that was enough to make women in the capital fall head over heels for him was infinitely magnified. A pair of warm and moist lips landed on her lips, gently caressing her. The owner of the lips seemed to be observing her reaction. When he saw that she was scared out of her wits again, he bit down on her lower lip slightly. When she cried out in pain, his nimble tongue went straight into her mouth. At that moment, her body stiffened and she forgot to react. Her hands that were holding onto her sleeves tightened slightly. As if he was afraid of scaring her, he quickly moved away from her lips. However, he changed his direction and whispered into her ear. "Do you think an elder brother would treat his younger sister like this?" She leaned on him softly and looked at him. She was extremely shocked. "Just like how I treated you that night in the inn when I smelled the lover's fragrance, or how you treated me when you were drunk twice. Do you think it's possible for this to happen between siblings?" With a boom, Chu Qingyan felt something explode in her ear. Chapter 699. When those words fell, she felt as if there were countless fireworks flying towards her. Then they scattered in front of her eyes, turning into a dazzling brilliance, and finally condensed into the brightest fireworks in the eyes of the person in front of her. Chu Qingyan felt that at this moment, she was even more dizzy than after drinking Nu Hong for 10 years. Drunk. She was in that mesmerizing gaze that made people unable to extricate themselves. It was as if there was an intoxicating fragrance quietly rippling in the air. After Xiaosu finished speaking, he quietly waited for her reaction. This was the first time that he had expressed his feelings to the person he liked. He was not familiar with the business and was also a bit awkward. Xiaosu was also calming down the fluctuations in his heart. But, it seemed like the person in front of him was in a daze. He did not know where her mind had flown to. Xiaosu could not help but hold his forehead again. Could it be that he did not make it clear enough? "I think I'm dreaming." When he was feeling helpless, he suddenly heard her whisper. When he was about to raise his head to look at her, a hand suddenly groped around his thigh. While he was puzzled, a finger twisted down. "Does it hurt?" the little fellow in front of him innocently asked. Xiaosu smiled. He had received countless injuries since he was young. Just now, her strength to him was just like scratching an itch. "It doesn't hurt." The person in front of him inexplicably let out a sigh of relief. No wonder, so it really was a dream. Otherwise, with the big ice cube's personality, how could he hug and kiss me? If he didn't take the wrong medicine, then he must have a fever. Chu Qingyan shook her head and muttered to herself. She did not miss anything that entered Xiaosu's ears and the smile on his face disappeared. He had really been defeated by her. Seeing that the person in front of him was about to close her eyes, intending to use this as an excuse to fade away this dream, a certain person's most proud indifference turned to ashes at this moment. If you want to confirm if this is a dream, I can help you. Before she could react, her arm was pulled by a strong force. She lost her balance and fell forward. She couldn't help but cry out. She didn't fall to the ground as expected. Instead, she bumped into a hard but warm chest. She couldn't help but raise her head. His warm breath was already in front of her eyes. Qing Yan, the person in front of her, had only called her name, but she was already a little dazed. It wasn't that her name hadn't been called before, but it was only when the person in front of her called her name that she felt her heart tremble. Seeing that she was drifting away again, Xiaosu could no longer hold back. He leaned over and covered her lips with a domineering kiss. Since he had conveyed so much verbally, and she still couldn't understand, he could only teach her by example. He bit down hard on her lips, causing her pink lips to bleed from his bite. Hiss, she sucked in a breath and scrunched up her face in pain. She wanted to escape, but the hands that were imprisoning her were tightly clenched, leaving her nowhere to run. He didn't leave her lips. Instead, he rubbed the place where he had bitten her lightly. Then, he stared into her eyes and said, "Do you still feel like this is a dream?" Chu Qingyan had already woken up the moment she bumped into his chest. She was so shocked that she chose to hypnotize herself, but now that she was forcefully awakened by the big ice block, how could she not be awake? She wanted to defend herself, but at this moment, it was clear that the person in front of her didn't want to give her a chance to say anything she didn't understand. When she opened her mouth to speak, he took the opportunity to barge into her territory and shut her up. Chu Qingyan felt as if she was surrounded by a ball of fire. Her entire body was burning, and all the heat came from the person in front of her. No, it should be said that it was at first, but in the end, it was impossible to tell whose heat was transmitted to whom. Was the big ice block trying to eat her? She was shocked by her own thoughts. A certain someone was angered, and his movements were more intense than before. However, his gaze was on her. When he saw her timid expression, he couldn't help but be gentle. He raised his hand to caress her back, and then whispered between his lips, "Qingyan, mm." Her eyes were unusually bright as if they had been washed by water. Xiaosu was dazzled by her eyes. His heart rippled, and he forgot what he wanted to say. He pressed her against him and deepened the kiss. She was a beginner, and so was Xiaosu. Even if the two of them had been intimate before, they were still in a daze. However, men had an instinct that was far better than women. In front of the person they loved, they would learn without a teacher. In addition to the previous time, Xiaosu slowly tasted the taste of it. He kept deepening it, as if he wanted to tear the person in front of him into pieces. It was like the ancient saying, when the golden wind meets the jade dew, it is better than countless things in the world. For Chu Qingyan, the entanglement of lips and teeth was unfamiliar. Even if there was that time at the inn, she couldn't take the initiative and passively accept it. Or it could be said that she was led by him. She went from stumbling to barely being able to adapt to his strength and speed. The words he said just now suddenly kept repeating in her ears. Her face was hot, but she still vaguely understood the meaning behind what the two of them were doing. She slowly raised her hands that were hanging by her sides, and then she couldn't help but wrap them around his neck. This action was subconscious and instinctive, but it had a different meaning for Xiaosu. He was slightly stunned, but it only happened for a moment. He increased his strength, as if he wanted to rub her into his bones and blood. Just now, she still had some energy to think about the relationship between the two of them, but now she was confused by his actions. She didn't have the energy to think, and all her attention was on him. There was no resistance, cooperation, obedience, and in the end, she was unable to extricate herself. She didn't resist his touch, which proved that in this little fellow's heart, his position was different. Receiving this answer, a certain person was very happy. He left her lips, and his gaze went from her blurred eyes to her red face, and then to her bright lips. His eyes deepened little by little. Continue. It seemed to be a question, but the action had already determined the answer. He was like a diligent student who had thrown himself into a sea of questions. Every question had to be carefully studied and seriously answered. Chu Qingyan only used a hairpin to tie up her long hair when she went out today. At this time, because of the movements of the two, the hairpin slowly came out of her hair and finally fell to the ground. It made a little noise, but it didn't attract the attention of the two. 3,000 strands of hair fell down, softly spreading over her shoulders, across his cheeks, her ears. In between breaths, his hand stroked her hair. Her beautiful face, like a peach blossom, was contrasted by white and black, black and white, making it even more alluring. The beauty was like a flower in the clouds. Chapter 700. The beauty was like a flower in the clouds? No, not in the clouds, but in front of his eyes. How could he allow her to be so far away from him? No matter where she was, he would not allow her to leave his side. With a strong sense of possessiveness, Xiaosu did not give her much time to breathe. Instead, he continued to teach her by example. Continue. Do you want more? What do you think? I'll give up. When they separated in the end, Chu Qingyan's entire body was buried in his embrace. Her cheeks were so hot that she could fry an egg and it was 80% done. She was panting lightly and powerless. The big ice cube had been fighting for too long, almost eating all the air in her lungs. Feeling her lips burning, Chu Qingyan couldn't help covering her face. She was too ashamed to see anyone. At this time, Xiaosu was already full. He raised his hand and gently patted her back to help her breathe. He knew that he had to give her time to straighten out, so he didn't rush her and let her hide in his arms like a little kitten. Outside, Hualing, who had endured countless looks from passers-by because he was traveling too slowly, suddenly heard his master's voice. When he thought he could end this long torment, what he heard was, "Let's go around the city again." The more lively the better. Hualing dug his ears. Did he hear wrong? Go around again. The more lively the better. What was his master doing with the little princess? Was it a new way to play? Hualing silently waved the little whip in tears and then turned the horse around. He estimated that he would receive even more looks of disdain later. Going slowly on a lively street, he would be cursed to death by people. The people in the carriage only had each other in their eyes and could not understand Hualing's collapsed mood at this moment. Have you rested enough? He felt it was enough and spoke up. Hearing his voice, which was more hoarse than usual with a hint of sexiness, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but think of what he had said when they were entangled. The temperature that had just faded from her face rose again. Needless to say, her face was probably as red as a monkey's, but now. No. She softly snorted. She had the strength to go against him, which meant that she had recovered. His lips curled into a relaxed smile. Then, he placed his hands on her shoulders and straightened her body. His gaze fell on her face. And her face was as beautiful as the sunset. However, her gaze kept avoiding him. If it wasn't on the roof of the car, it would be on the wall of the car. She just didn't dare to look at him. Xiaosu felt that the shy little guy was quite cute. You have an answer in your heart now? He asked seriously. Chu Qingyan blushed and pretended to be confused. What? Xiaosu, who was in a good mood, didn't care about her awkward act of pretending to be confused. It didn't matter. He could slowly trigger her memories. Therefore, he continued, perhaps at the beginning, I treated you as a child, but this feeling has changed over the past few years. Although she didn't look at him, her ears were already perked up. Not a little sister, not a little girl. It wasn't that he didn't see her perking up her ears and listening seriously, so he purposely stopped here. After waiting for a long time, there was no movement from the person opposite her. Chu Qingyan was a little impatient. At this moment, she had already forgotten her original intention. She instantly raised her head and urged, "What's next? What is it?" Even though they had already done such an intimate thing and she had vaguely guessed it in her heart, Chu Qingyan still wanted to hear him admit it personally. This had a different meaning. This was a kind of guarantee. A kind of recognition. She was finally willing to face it. Xiao Su's lips curled up, revealing a peerless smile. Chu Qingyan only reacted at this moment, but she couldn't care less. There was no turning back. A girl's restraint was useless at this moment. She must have an answer. Xiao Su knew that angering her wouldn't do him any good. Moreover, it would be extremely troublesome, so he didn't tease her anymore. He leaned over slightly, and his lips brushed past her cheek and landed beside her ear. Didn't you hear what Hualing and the others called you? Little Princess Consort, is the mistress of the King of England's palace, the mistress of Shao Lai cavalry. She is also the wife that I, Xiao Su, will spend the rest of my life with. Mistress? Wife? Her expression drifted away again. But this time, she wasn't escaping. She was shocked and happy, moved and wanted to cry. Are you satisfied with this answer? Her expression did not escape his eyes, and he could not help but chuckle. Chu Qingyan was brought back to her senses by his laughter. Big Ice Cube, she gathered her courage to look at the person in front of her, but in the end, she couldn't say a word. Originally, she thought that he only treated her as a younger sister, like family. All this time, she had been hypnotizing herself and lamenting herself, but it was all because she thought too much. If she had asked earlier, would she not have so many sleepless nights? The impact of the answer made her lose her ability to speak, but it was undeniable that her heart and her emotions couldn't calm down because of his words. It could be said that she was ecstatic. Don't worry, you can slowly digest it. We still have a lifetime. Xiao Su took her into his arms, his movements gentle, as if he was holding the most precious treasure in the world. She softly replied in his arms. In the future, I will call you Ayan. This name can only be called by me. Xiao Su patted her back, as if he was coaxing her. This was a habit. From the moment he met her, this habit was formed by her, and then slowly took root in his life. Then what about me? What should I call you? Chu Qingyan was troubled. You can still call me whatever you used to call me. Although he felt that the 3 words Big Ice Cube were tacky at first, after hearing it for a long time, he felt that as long as it came from her mouth, it was pleasing to the ear. Moreover, he didn't plan on changing her name. Alright, I think Ayan sounds good. She was satisfied and gave him a compliment. Xiao Su curled his lips. The change in the way he addressed her was just the beginning. From now on, he wanted to enter her life and leave his mark as Xiao Su in her life. In the past, he already existed in her life, but this time was different because he wanted to use another identity. Chu Qingyan seemed to have felt the change in their relationship. There was a faint sense of novelty in her heart, but more than that, there was a kind of sweetness. So, you understand your own feelings now? Just as she was letting her imagination run wild, an unexpected question came into her ears. Ah! After exclaiming, she bit her lips and her face started to heat up again. In your heart, what position am I? This was her question, but he wanted her answer now. Although the answer was obvious, he wanted her to admit it herself. It wasn't to satisfy a man's possessiveness, but he wanted her to clearly not avoid him anymore. He didn't want to waste the 2 of their time on searching. The most important thing for him was efficiency. Chapter 701. Everything that happened in the carriage today was out of her expectations. Whether it was his words or his example, she was at a loss for what to do. Now that he took an inch and wanted a mile, Chu Qingyan's beautiful face turned red. Seeing her shy and helpless appearance, Xiao Su's heart softened along with her expression, but he did not plan on letting her go. Some things could be delayed, but some things had to be settled as soon as possible. His Ayan was the most beautiful woman in the world and would be easily coveted by others, so he had to let her understand her feelings. He was confident that Ayan would not leave him, but he did not want those so-called accidents to interfere with their lives. What position do I have in your heart? Xiao Su held her wrist. He did not use much strength, but it was not easy to break free. Chu Qingyan felt his fingers rubbing against her wrist. Those slender fingers that held weapons all day had calluses. On her delicate skin, she felt the skin that he touched heat up bit by bit. Even her heart could not help but tremble. She could not stand the gradually rising temperature. The scene of the two of them touching each other suddenly flooded her mind. Her throat began to dry up and she had the urge to run away. Whatever she thought in her mind, she put it into action. Her feet moved and she half bent over to stand up. Because the big ice cube was leaning against the other side of the carriage, there was still a lot of space for her. She raised her other hand and wanted to lift the curtain and fly out in one go. Unfortunately, she forgot that she could play tricks in front of anyone, but not in front of this person. This was because this person who looked calm on the surface had a pair of sharp eyes. As a result, when her hand was an inch away from the curtain, the hand holding her left wrist suddenly exerted force. Her body, which had been rushing out, was pulled back in an instant. Then, she couldn't stand on her tiptoes, and her entire body was suddenly spread out in the opposite direction. Xiao Su's brows slightly raised and he leaned over to catch her. But the moment her body fell into his embrace, she was forced to lean back. So, in the end, the result, Xiao Su was below and she was on top. The two of them were lying on the couch in the carriage. Fortunately, there was a layer of soft carpet on the ground. Otherwise, this fall would have been quite painful. At this moment, the two of them were tightly pressed against each other. Chu Qingyan looked at the handsome face that was about to touch hers and the blush on her cheek spread again. Inadvertently meeting those eyes that seemed to be smiling yet not smiling, her heart swayed again. Ian likes this. He gave a faint smile and the light in his eyes dissipated. She could tell that he was in a good mood. When she heard this, she immediately struggled to get up, but she did not expect that someone else's movements become him on top of her. Chu Qingyan felt as if her heart was about to leap out of her chest again. She looked at him with her beautiful eyes. He had outstanding looks, a noble aura, and exquisite features. When he was dealing with others, his eyes were calm and indifferent, and he rarely revealed any emotions. However, when he looked at her now, Xian Mo's eyes were filled with a mischievous smile, as if he was teasing her. Today, he was always like this. Who would confess with such a teasing look? Wait, confess? Chu Qingyan was dumbfounded. Did the big ice cube just confess to her? Heavens! At this moment, he looked down from above and saw the young girl's emotions. He couldn't help but raise the corners of his eyes. Little fellow, today I'll teach you what to pay attention to in business. What do you mean? Chu Qingyan was taken aback. How did they end up talking about this? When doing business, you can't be as magnanimous as you normally are. Even blood-related brothers have clear accounts, so politeness demands reciprocity. It is necessary to haggle over every detail. In short, you can't let yourself suffer a loss. Do you understand? He had one hand by her ear and the other hand caressing her cheek, not avoiding her at all. Chu Qingyan admitted that he was right, but wasn't it strange for them to talk about business in this situation? But Xiao Su's following words were enough for her to understand what he was planning. So I answered your question just now. Conversely, shouldn't you also answer my question just now? Isn't this fair? Although you are my princess consort, we still have to be clear about this. Xiao Su spoke frankly and the little fellow was already embarrassed by his words. He smiled. You still have to be so clear with me. It was obvious that she was focusing on the wrong thing. Unfortunately, Xiao Su was unforgiving. What do you think? Stingy. Chu Qingyan turned her head and wanted to bite his finger, but he avoided it. His fingers rubbed her face, and his tone was a little rascally. Just now you took advantage of me and wanted to run away. It's irresponsible of you. I'm afraid that you will run away again. As long as you give me the explanation you owe me, I will let you go. I'm not afraid of being called stingy. When did the big ice cube become so eloquent? No, in front of outsiders, the King of England was cold and indifferent, but in front of her, he often acted like a big bully. However, while the two of them were panting, she had already become more rational. Just now, her heart was in a mess because of him, and now she had found her soul. Although she had never been in love in the modern world, she would despise herself if she still didn't understand at this time. At this time, he had said so much just to beat around the bush to find out her feelings. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips, and the hazy glass in her heart that she didn't dare to break began to slowly crack at this time. In front of her, this noble and outstanding man was looking down, waiting for her answer. She didn't know where the courage came from in her heart, but she couldn't help but reach out her hands and hug the person in front of her. Then she moved closer little by little, and finally landed a light kiss on his lips. This was her answer. Xiao Su didn't expect her to take the initiative, but this silence spoke louder than words. His face was filled with joy, and he lifted the little face that wanted to hide in his arms. He quickly lowered his head and captured those already bright red lips, and urgently deepened his strength, engulfing everything. After the entanglement, Chu Qingyan laid in his arms. Her body was weak, and the strength that she had gathered with great difficulty was once again sucked away by him. But the man's body under her made her feel at ease, and his warm body temperature made her feel at ease. She didn't shy away from giving herself to him. This person would be hers in the future. The reason why she didn't dare to admit it before was because she didn't dare to believe that this high and mighty noble person would really like her. But this was the truth, the fact that made her happy, and it gave her the courage to reveal her feelings. It turned out that she didn't want to be his sister because she already had feelings for him that surpassed that of an elder brother. She was unwilling to just be someone by his side who could be left at any time. But, her best friend said that things that were too easy to get were often not cherished. So Chu Qingyan blinked, and a trace of craftiness flashed in her eyes again. Chapter 702. At this time, the little fellow was lying on his chest, as comfortable as a lazy cat that came out to bask in the sun in winter. He would not forget how helpless she had been in front of him before. The little fellow had an advantage that he usually admired but was a bit depressed about right now. That was, she was too adaptable. He had originally wanted to tease her a bit more since such a shy and cute side of her was rarely seen. However, this also meant that she had already acknowledged their identities, so Xiao Su was still in a very good mood. Especially after eating and drinking to his heart's content, he had never felt that there was anything in this world that could make him feel happy other than defeating an enemy nation and learning a secret technique. He gently stroked her long hair and closed his eyes to enjoy this warm and relaxed moment. At the same time, he calculated that it was about time for Huo Ling to drive the carriage back to the bank. However, he ignored a certain little cat that was scheming against him in his arms. Huo Ling received his master's orders and could finally drive the carriage back. His face was covered in tears as he finally did not have to endure the rolling eyes of passers-by. It might not be peaceful right now. You have to be careful when you go out, Xiao Su slowly said. Because of the two's entanglement just now, his voice was a bit low, but it was not hard to hear that he was in a good mood right now. She could hear that big ice block did not care very much. Chu Qingyan thought that it shouldn't be a troublesome matter. After responding, she thought of the assassination they had encountered on the road and said, I feel that the ambush seemed to have come from the imperial family. Then she told him the reasons for her suspicions. Previously, she had ordered Lu Guang to write a letter to tell Big Ice Block about the assassination, but she did not write down her suspicions. She had always wanted to find a chance to discuss with him in detail to see who else wanted to harm them in secret. It was a pity that so many things had happened as soon as they came back. She had not thought that they would be talking about this in this situation. Xiao Su heard her words and a faint smile floated on his face. As expected of someone he had taught, she hit the nail on the head. Your analysis is not bad. The assassins came from the imperial palace. More accurately, they were hidden guards that were trained by the Liang family. He did not plan to hide it from her. He did not want his woman to be in danger, so he had to give her a warning so that she would be more prepared. Chu Qingyan did not think that it would be Liang Ho. She said in shock, "Why?" If it was Imperial Concubine Moon, it would make sense, but she could not figure out that it was Empress Liang who wanted to capture her. They had no grievances or grudges. Not to mention the distant ones, she was her son's princess consort. Wasn't this too inconceivable? If they want to capture you to threaten me into compromising, they'll have to send their own troops. When Xiao Su said this, his tone was indifferent, and his expression was somewhat indifferent. This was not the first time she wanted to make a move on the little fellow. As a mother and son, there probably weren't many in the world who could do this. Hearing the loneliness on his calm face, Chu Qingyan's heart ached for him. She couldn't help but hold his hand. He seemed to feel her silent comfort and held her hand back. "Big Ice Cube, don't worry. I'll protect myself in the future. I won't let anyone use me to threaten you." The coldness between his brows faded and was replaced by fierceness. He clenched his fists. "With me here, no one can touch you." Moved, Chu Qingyan felt sweet. Big Ice Cube was so domineering, so handsome. She nodded. "Big Ice Cube is right not to send troops. It's currently a chaotic autumn. If we show off our abilities, it will attract the jealousy of many people. In addition, we made many enemies before, so there will be endless trouble. Also, the weapon forging hasn't been completed yet. If those people make trouble, we don't have enough ability to protect ourselves." Good analysis. He patted her shoulder as a reward. The little fellow spoke his concerns, but there was another point. He had already found the most important thing in his life, so he didn't plan on meddling in court matters. The little fellow had once said something right. No matter who was missing in the world, the sun would still rise in the east and set in the west. So even if he didn't go out, someone else would. But she was still a bit worried. "Big Ice Cube, if you don't go out, someone else will. Nansang country's army is strong and isn't weaker than Sichuan country. If our army loses, Sichuan's people won't be able to make a living. At that time, the court might even send someone to invite you." She couldn't be blamed for having such pessimistic thoughts, but she had fought with the Prince of Nansang before. His ruthlessness and decisiveness made her raise her guard. As soon as she finished speaking, she was picked up and placed on his lap. She raised her head slightly and met his eyes. Her face heated up and she wanted to turn away, but unexpectedly, his hand had already covered her face. His eyes were filled with affection and a smile appeared. "Ian is worried about me. But don't worry, if the sky falls, someone else will hold it up. Sichuan is in its prosperous period and won't be easily defeated. If they beg me to come out after losing, then for us, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, so you don't have to worry." Chu Qingyan understood what he meant. It was better to send charcoal in the snow than icing on the cake. If he was needed at a critical moment, then in the future, the Big Ice Cube's position in Sichuan country would only be high and not low. If those people in the dark wanted to make a move, she was afraid that they would have to think twice. If they couldn't guarantee that nothing would go wrong, then they would only be consigned to eternal damnation. She couldn't help but admire the Big Ice Cube's intelligence. Fighting a war would take at least half a year. At that time, regardless of winning or losing, the Fuli mountain range's mineral resources would have been completely extracted and the weapon forging should be almost complete. It would be enough to protect himself. With confidence, even if he faced the Sichuan emperor, he wouldn't be afraid. She just hoped that it wouldn't come to that point because she knew that the Big Ice Cube wouldn't want to see the scene of him fighting with his closest relatives. The two of them quietly leaned against each other and no longer spoke, enjoying the moment of silence. After an unknown amount of time, they heard a "hoo" sound outside the carriage and then it stopped. Xiao Su let go of her and she took the opportunity to sit away from him. He didn't understand why she moved so quickly, but he saw a sly smile flash on her lips. Big Ice Cube, liking is liking, being together is being together. These are two different things. I admit that I like you, but I didn't agree to be your princess. Before, it was just a symbol of status and doesn't count. You know that in your heart, so if you want me to agree to you, it will depend on your performance." After saying all of this, Chu Qingyan blinked her eyes at him. She was very naive, but the words that came out of her mouth made people not know whether to laugh or cry. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes and reached out to grab her, but he didn't expect that she was already prepared. She flew out of the carriage with her hands and threw a provocative look at him before she left. "This lady's tofu isn't that delicious. So dear His Royal Highness, please take this." The curtain of the carriage swayed in front of him. She had already run far away, but he was smiling happily. She still gave him the answer herself. But looking at his performance, how difficult was it? When Xiao Su got out of the carriage, Turan was already waiting outside. He was a little surprised to see his master's happy face. "What's the matter?" Xiao Su restrained his expression. "Master, there's an urgent report from the capital." Chapter 703. Upon hearing that it was from the capital, Xiao Su frowned. He raised his head to look at the door, but the little fellow had already fled without a trace. He didn't want to pay attention to the news, but in the end, he still moved his lips. "Go to the study." A moment later, Turan stood in front of the desk and presented the letter. "Master, the news from Water Spirit isn't about the Empress, but about the progress of the war between us and the Nansang Kingdom." "Oh." Xiao Su opened the letter and opened it in front of him. After reading 10 lines at a glance, his face was expressionless. "Fourth Imperial brother volunteered?" Turan nodded. Previously, the Fu family's faction supported the fourth prince. It wasn't that no generals volunteered, but because His Majesty didn't think highly of him. "You have always been the center of attention, but you didn't appear. The war between the two armies is imminent. Even if the Liang family protected you, it couldn't be delayed. So His Majesty agreed to the fourth prince's request." Xiao Su put down the letter, his expression indifferent. Even if this prince volunteered, Imperial Father might not give this prince military power. It wasn't easy for him to take it back, so this prince isn't surprised at all that he gave it to fourth Imperial brother. It could be said that he had already expected today's situation. His Majesty gave so much time, but it wasn't for Master. It was to shut the mouths of the people and let them know that Master was willing to give up. Moreover, he would be cursed for abandoning the country's safety. Because he had stayed in his fief for so long and was far away from the imperial city, Turan didn't have as many scruples as before. He faintly felt dissatisfied with the emperor in the capital, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. After all, he was his master's biological father. As subordinates, they had no right to interfere. Xiao Su knew that Turan was speaking up for him, but Xiao Su still gave him a warning look. The reason why Imperial Father dared to leave him this period of time was because when he left, he promised that no matter what happened in the future, he would not interfere in the affairs of the court. That was why he was able to live a peaceful life for these few years. He furrowed his brows, and a trace of profoundness flashed past his eyes. Fourth Imperial brother has neither scholarly achievements nor outstanding achievements. Although this prince has not been here for the past few years, the ministers in the court who prioritize the first prince over the younger ones, as well as the Liang family, will not allow fourth imperial brother to have too much power. Therefore, this time, Nansang nation's invasion is an opportunity. If he grasps it well, he will be able to gain a foothold in the court. Moreover, compared to this prince, who is in a difficult situation but does not appear, he will be able to capture the hearts of the people more. This was Imperial Father's plan, and it was also what Imperial Mother was worried about. That was why she ignored his previous warning and wanted to capture the little fellow to threaten him at all costs. Turan and Hualing felt very indignant for their master at this moment. If it wasn't for their master's protection for so many years, how could Sichuan have enjoyed 10 years of peace and prosperity? Are you too feeling indignant for this prince? Xiao Su smiled faintly. Without waiting for them to answer, he shook his head and continued, Ian was right about one thing. Giving someone a sweet fragrance is not as good as stabbing them with a knife. Therefore, we cannot force the people's thoughts. Moreover, we did so many things in the past only because of our identity as the eldest prince. We eat the emperor's salary and bear the emperor's worries. If the emperor doesn't need it, we can only listen to orders. The emperor's authority is above, we cannot defy him. Turin was surprised. When did Master stop being so open and calm because of His Majesty's favoritism? However, no matter what the reason was, this was good. Actually, for Xiao Su, it was only because of a shift in emotions. He used to look forward to the Sichuan emperor's care and attention, but now, because of another person's appearance, he gave her all the warmth he rarely had in his life. In his life, at most, the feelings he had for other people were just blood ties. At this time, Turin had adjusted his attitude and asked, "Master, do you think the fourth prince will win this time when he personally leads the army? The situation on the battlefield is unpredictable. No one can say for sure. The fourth prince has not practiced in actual combat, but father should have considered this point. He should have many strategists by his side," Xiao Su said calmly. Turin nodded. Master is right. This time, His Majesty has arranged for a military general to be the fourth prince's deputy general. There are 2 civil officials accompanying him. I heard that the military general was personally promoted by the Fu clan in the past 2 years and his martial arts are not bad. The 2 civil officials are from the Fu clan and I heard that they have deep knowledge of the art of war. I hope these people are not idiots. It was not that Xiao Su did not know what Father Emperor was planning. He was using the fourth prince and the Fu clan. If the fourth prince became famous because of this battle, then not only would his status rise, even the Fu clan's status would rise. At that time, it would be easy to deal with the Liang clan. The premise was that he did not want to fight for the throne. Huo Ling did not have a good impression of the Fu clan at all. He mocked, 15 years ago, the Fu clan participated in the battle, but they suffered heavy losses. I don't know if they can turn the situation around this time. After Huo Ling finished speaking, he saw that his master was still as calm as before. He was no longer the person who would fearlessly sacrifice himself for the country. He felt very gratified. He asked curiously, "Master, do you hope the fourth prince will win this battle?" Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. "It would be best if he wins. This prince can relax for a while." His master's meaning was very clear. If the fourth prince lost, then only his master could clean up the mess. But if the fourth prince won, then the matter of the crown prince would be immediately put on the agenda. Then Consort Yu's first target would be his master. After Huo Ling finished thinking, he felt very sad. No matter if he won or lost this battle, his master would not have time to relax. You just need to pay attention to this matter. There is no need to be too nervous. What will come will come. Write a letter for this prince. Tell Imperial Mother to have the Liang clan restrain themselves and not provoke Father Emperor. No matter how good the news is from the front lines. Yes. Huo Ling did not think too much and accepted the order. In the study, only Turin was left standing. Ling Feng, prepare a generous gift for this prince. These few days seemed to be Ling Feng's eldest son's birthday. He had heard the little fellow talk about it a while ago. He remembered today and gave the order. Huo Ling agreed in surprise. Shouldn't these things be taken care of by the little Wang Fei? When did his master care about these trivial matters? Xiao Su saw through his subordinate's thoughts, but he did not point it out. After the commotion in the afternoon, the little fellow probably would not have the mind to think about these things for a while, so he took care of it for her. Master, you seem to be in a good mood recently. Turin was curious. Xiao Su did not deny it, it's probably because people are in high spirits. Chapter 704. People were in high spirits because of happy events? What happy event had Master encountered recently? Why didn't his subordinates know about it? But seeing Master's abnormal analysis of the situation for them, it was enough to see that he was in a good mood. Once Master's mood fluctuated, it must be related to the little princess. It had to be said that Xiao Su's subordinates had a very strong sixth sense. When Turan left, he was alone in the study. Xiao Su's fingers tapped on the table as he fell into deep thought. Just now, the thoughts of the fire spirit and the earth spirit didn't escape his eyes. 5 years had passed, and his body had changed little by little, but he didn't notice it. If they weren't surprised, he wouldn't have reflected at this moment. It turned out that many things on his body had been subtly changed by the little guy. For example, blind loyalty, blind filial piety, or regardless of the consequences, he insisted on being prepared to sacrifice himself at any time for the country, the family, and the people. He faintly mocked himself, but that sneer quickly disappeared into the corner of his mouth and was replaced by relief. The little fellow was right. He had thought too much about others for so many years. It was time to think about himself. He smiled. Actually, the source of the change was that he was no longer alone. He had a little fellow by his side. But later, he found that he was not assured no matter who was responsible for her future. That was why he woke up and found that he was no longer the King of England, Xiao Su. But he was not disgusted by this change. Instead, he gladly accepted it. In this world, the only person who could make him change and make him gladly accept it was probably only her. He calmly brushed the creases on his sleeves to cover the scratches left by the little fellow on the back of his hand. He turned back to remind her that her claws needed to be fixed. He was not afraid of leaving a mark, it was just for fun. But if the clothes could not cover the place next time, how would he establish an image in front of his subordinates? At this time, Jean Ling, who had been reviewing the accounts for days, stepped into the study with a tired face. Compared to the happy Xiao Su, his expression was like the difference between heaven and earth. Jean Ling presented the account book with both hands. Mistress, after many days of checking, I found that Shi Qing and Li Buqing really conspired to falsify the accounts. This subordinate did not discover that they had embezzled so much silver. Furthermore, the amount was so huge. This subordinate was unable to see through them and feels guilty. Although his master had previously said that he would not pursue his responsibility, but when he investigated the accounts, he found that the things that Shi Qing and Li Buqing had done behind his back were simply outrageous. How much is the deficit? You tell Turan. He will solve this problem. Xiao Su thought of his third brother's plan, and his eyes darkened. Yes. Jean Ling returned to her seat after handing the account book to her master. Master, there is something that this subordinate does not understand. Speak. Why did the young princess conclude that both of them are suspects and not just one of them? This was a question that had puzzled him for many days. You can ask Ian about this yourself. Although he knew the answer, he felt that it was more meaningful for the little fellow to say it. He felt that it was time to cultivate the little fellow's awareness of being the mistress of the household. This subordinate understands. Jean Ling felt that her master's words made sense. Xiao Su seemed to have thought of something. Although Ian will cooperate with the Hua family soon, if she needs silver, you will cooperate unconditionally. Jean Ling was a little surprised. The young princess was actually cooperating with the ruthless young master of the Hua family. He originally thought that she was just saying it on the spur of the moment. He did not expect that she would really do it. Although he admired the young princess's intelligence and business were two different things. Moreover, listening to her master's tone, it seemed that he would fully support her. Oh heavens! Thus, Jean Ling considered his tone and carefully said, Master, our bank is in a deficit. I'm afraid that we don't have so much spare money for the young princess to use. He did not deliberately want to stop the young princess from doing business, but he wanted to leave some capital for his master. What if the young princess lost it all? Xiao Su faintly glanced at Jean Ling. Jean Ling felt that this gaze was 1,000 caddies heavy. His back was sweating. Ben Wang gave all the assets to you to manage not to hear your excuses. If the bank is out of money, then think of a way. Not everyone can sit in this position. Since you're sitting in it, you don't need Ben Wang to teach you what to do. Otherwise, if this position could be taken by anyone, would Ben Wang need to specially train you for so many years? Although Xiao Su's tone was calm, Jin Ling could still hear the displeasure in his voice. He quickly lowered his head and apologized, "This subordinate understands. And, there is no need to tell Ian that the bank has a problem with its funds. Let her focus on her own matters. Within half a year, you must fill the deficit." Jin Ling suddenly felt that there was still a long way to go and quickly agreed. "You can leave." "Yes." Xiao Su rarely spoke so harshly to his subordinates. Because they had followed him for many years, they understood his temperament and rarely touched his reverse scale. But he did not doubt his woman, but other people dared to question her ability. This made him very dissatisfied. Xiao Su did not notice that after he made up his mind, he had a tendency to spoil Chu Qingyan to the point that she was out of control and out of control. But a certain person was completely unaware. After escaping from the carriage, she ran straight to her room. At this time, her face was burning hot and she was in a state of excitement. Her mind was filled with the scene of the two of them being intimate. She threw herself onto the bed and buried herself in the blankets. Right now, she needed to calm down and digest what had happened today. She calmed down until night. When she finally got up from the bed, she met Xining's strange gaze. She coughed a few times and felt a little guilty. "What are you standing there for? It's time for dinner. This servant wants to ask where you want to eat." Xining asked with a smile. Recently, she had been eating in her room, but it was to avoid the big ice cube. In the past, the two of them would eat together, but today, she did not plan to see him. After today's matter, their relationship was a little strange. She wanted to wait until she got used to it. "Here." "All right." After agreeing, Xining cleaned up the table and said, "Master, just now, this servant heard Huling and the others talking about the battle with the southern Sung Kingdom. They said that in 2 days, our army will set off." "Oh." The war between the two countries was inevitable, so Chu Qingyan was not surprised. "I heard that the one leading the army this time is His Highness the Fourth Prince," Xining said again. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Xiao Ran. That arrogant and despotic little boy who became her friend in the end? After not seeing him for 4 years, she had almost forgotten him. At this time, Jean Xian quickly walked in. "Master, this is a letter from the capital." Chapter 705. A letter from the capital? Chu Qingyan stared blankly. Her parents were both here, who else in the capital would write her a letter? Even if it was a secret report, it shouldn't have been sent by Jean Xian. She took the letter doubtfully. Just as she was about to open it, she heard an excited voice. "My good daughter, come out and welcome your father. See what good things your father has brought for you." She didn't need to guess to know who this voice belonged to. Chu Qingyan stuffed the letter into her sleeve and stepped out of the room, her face full of smiles. Hearing her father so happy, her mood was more or less affected by him. "Father, what did you bring for your daughter?" As soon as the voice fell, Chu Qingyan saw what her father was holding in his hand. Her smile froze on her face. An eagle. And it was a young eagle. Father Chu didn't notice his daughter's reaction. He excitedly skipped over to her and presented a treasure. "Kai Kai, this is what I picked up from the backyard. It's injured, but I've already sent for a doctor." Chu Qingyan looked at the dying young eagle and couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Her father's luck was too good. First, he picked up a family of puppies. Today, he picked up a young eagle. In a few days, would he pick up a few leopards? She estimated that it wouldn't be long before this place became an animal shelter. Chu Qingyan forgot that her father had also picked up an upside-down spring onion. Moreover, this inwardly passionate spring onion had turned into a black-bellied wolf a few years later, coaxing and tricking her into eating it. However, her father's kind heart couldn't be hurt. Otherwise, what would she do if his glass heart broke? Thus, when she saw the pleading look in her father's eyes, Chu Qingyan's heart softened. Let your daughter take a look at the young eagle and see if its injury is serious. Father Chu saw it and immediately brought it over. At this time, Chu Qingyan discovered that the young eagle's right wing had been hit by an arrow. Moreover, the arrow looked somewhat familiar. Wasn't this the latest batch of arrow feathers forged in Fuli mountain range? The markings on it were personally designed by her. This eagle was shot down by Xiao Lai, but it was coincidentally picked up by his father who was passing by. She was well aware of the power of the arrow feather forged from the new material. For this young eagle to be able to escape a calamity and preserve a bit of its aura, it was already quite impressive. She didn't say much and instructed Jean Xin to invite a veterinarian. After a while, the veterinarian arrived. The veterinarian was shocked when he saw the eagle. "Young master, this eagle has an extraordinary origin." This veterinarian was personally trained by Ethereal. He was usually in charge of the warhorse's injuries and was quite knowledgeable about beasts. Therefore, Chu Qingyan was also surprised when she heard that. "Treat him first. We'll talk about it after he's cured." "Yes." The veterinarian did not dare to delay. He first examined the eagle, and the nervousness on his face faded away. He removed the arrow, applied medicine, and bandaged it in one go. Then, he smiled and said, "This eagle is very intelligent." It knew that it could not avoid the danger, so it turned to the side and saved its life. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she could not help but admire the young eagle. She asked, "Will it affect its flight after it recovers?" "The wound is not deep. It will heal in about 5 to 7 days, the veterinarian replied with a smile as he stroked his beard. Chu Qingyan was relieved. Then, she asked, "Just now, you said that this eagle has an extraordinary origin. What do you mean by extraordinary?" Before the veterinarian could reply, someone else took over the topic. "This is a gerfalcon, a giant bird of prey. It's very lethal." The person's voice was as clear as pearls falling on a plate, causing ripples in one's heart. Needless to say, the only person with such a heart-stirring voice was that noble man, Xiao Su. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. Their lips and tongues had touched at night, and the heat was still lingering. Therefore, she could not face him calmly. She slowed down a beat before turning to look at him. Xiao Su naturally knew that she was uncomfortable, so he did not pay too much attention to her. Instead, his gaze fell on the young eagle on the stone table. When the vet saw that it was his mistress, he bowed and said in admiration, "Mistress is very knowledgeable, and even knows about the god of 10,000 eagles." He then turned to Chu Qingyan and said, "There was a book that said that the most handsome bird that was carved out of Liaodong was a gerfalcon. It was very strong and sturdy, and it was the fastest and highest flying bird in the world. Thus, it was praised by the god of 10,000 eagles. However, gerfalcons are rarely seen because they are extremely rare." Chu Qingyan turned to look at the young eagle. The feathers on its head and tail were pure white. The only difference was that its head was dotted with brown spots. Most of the feathers on its body were grayish-brown. The eagle's beak was thicker and longer than ordinary birds, and its beak and claws were like iron hooks. Chu Qingyan felt that if those claws were ignored, it would be a good-looking eagle. Father Chu listened quietly. The more he listened, the brighter his eyes became. He could not help but jump out and exclaim, "Wow, Father is so amazing. He found the god of eagles." Everyone could not help but laugh. On one hand, Xiao Su was very impressed with his father-in-law's ability to pick up scraps. He was able to encounter all kinds of highly lethal animals. However, no one knew how much help Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su's good luck had brought to them. This was a story for another time. And would mention it soon. However, at this time, the veterinarian suddenly frowned and said, "Although eagles are solitary birds, gerfalcons are like the king of eagles. They are protected by a group of eagles. If they find out that we have injured a gerfalcon, I'm afraid it will cause a disaster." The veterinarian did not know where the arrow came from, but he knew that if the young eagle was injured here, they would not be able to escape the blame. The veterinarian's words made everyone break out in cold sweat. They could imagine how lethal a single eagle was, but what if it was a group of eagles? It was hard to imagine. How old is this young eagle? Xiao Su's expression did not change. About half a month after it was born, the veterinarian immediately replied. Chu Qingyan was shocked that it could grow to this size in half a month. Seeing the young princess's reaction, the veterinarian explained, an adult gerfalcon is about half the height of a person. When it spreads its wings, it is the length of an adult man's hands. That's why it is unusually fierce. Everyone imagined it and broke out in cold sweat. Xi Ning was scared out of her wits. Master, why don't we send this eagle away? Before Chu Qingyan could say anything, Chu Yang's father jumped out. His face was full of reluctance as he said, no way. Daddy saved it with much difficulty. You can't be so cruel. If you don't want to raise it, I will. Chu Qingyan's father's words put Chu Qingyan in a difficult position. She could not let her emotions get the better of her. If the eagles came looking for her, it would bring disaster to the entire bank. What's more, the fierce wind cavalry was here in disguise, and their identities could not be exposed. Otherwise, to Big Ice Cube, it would be as good as breaking her own wings. Just as Chu Qingyan was hesitating on how to persuade her father to send the young eagle to a safe place and let it go when it recovered, the person beside her spoke. Since you want to keep it, then let it stay. Zhang Qi, take good care of the young eagle. Make sure it recovers soon. Father Chu heard this and his sorrow turned into joy. He walked over and patted his son-in-law's shoulder. Good job. At this moment, Chu Qingyan looked at Xiao Su helplessly. Why did you agree? If father likes it, then let it stay. Besides, I'm here. Don't worry. Big Ice Cube's voice was gentle. Chu Qingyan enjoyed hearing it and couldn't help but smile. But halfway through, she suddenly paused. Father? Ah. Chapter 706. Our father. Since when did her father become his father? It was so out of place. When did the Big Ice Cube become so thick-skinned? Why didn't she know? Could it be that the Big Ice Cube's personality had changed after the two of them talked about it? Chu Qingyan subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of water and didn't dare to look at him again. At this time, after Chu Qingyan's father finished petting the little gerfalcon, he turned to look at his daughter and said in a negotiating tone, Kai Kai, your mother isn't very brave. Although Little Hai is very cute, it will scare your mother, so I'll leave it with you. I'll come and see it when I'm free, okay? Chu Qingyan had already expected this result. However, her father could not be so casual when it came to naming her. It was fine if he named her Little Annoyance, but he even named her Little C. She took a deep breath. Before she could answer, Little Hai had already walked over with the three little furs in tow. Chu Qingyan sometimes felt that Little Hai was really smart. It actually gave people the impression of an elegant lady. Little Hai's nose was very sensitive. When it smelled the unusual scent in the air, its fur immediately bristled. It looked around and finally fixed its gaze on the young eagles on the stone table. It bared its sharp fangs and looked ready to attack at any time. Chu Qingyan shouted, "Oh no, Little Hai is injured. He won't harm you or the children. Don't worry, I won't allow it." Chu Qingyan stood in front of Little Annoyance and lowered her head. She patted Little Annoyance's head and said gently, "Little Annoyance, Little Hai is injured." Because they had told her about the identity of the gerfalcon, Chu Qingyan felt that Little Hai and the others were at a disadvantage compared to the raptors, so she was more gentle with Little Hai. Feeling Chu Qingyan's comforting words, Little Hai's bristling fur smoothed out. Little Hai coldly looked at the half-dead gerfalcon. "I'm more liked by my master than you are. You can stay where you want to be." Then it changed its expression and rubbed Chu Qingyan's palm obediently. Then it took the three little ones for a stroll elsewhere. Chu Qingyan smiled and instructed Jean Xian to carry the gerfalcon to a side room in her courtyard. She also instructed the vet to take good care of it. Chu Qingyan, who was busy with her own business, didn't notice Xiao Su's gaze on her and Little Hai. Xiao Su was as sharp as a beast, and Little Hai's actions just now didn't escape his eyes. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Could it be that the little guy didn't know that Little Hai's identity? Foxes and eagles are natural enemies because they have the same prey. Little Annoyance was jealous just now. Hee, animals are the same as humans. They don't like their things being taken away by others. Huo Ling said with a smile on the side, but just as his words fell, his master's ice-cold gaze made him immediately shut up. Could it be that his master was also jealous? Could it? SSSS. He didn't dare to think about it anymore. Otherwise, his master's lofty image would collapse in his heart. He quickly turned to look for Jean Xian. Jean Xian, little brat, let me help you. Jean Xian didn't think that holding an eagle would require any help. Sometimes, Lord Huoling was quite naive. Chu Qingyan's father thought that Huoling's words were very interesting. He chuckled. Animals are just like humans. They're very smart. If it weren't for the three little ones always running to the bed to sleep, I wouldn't be willing to give them to Kai Kai. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. Every morning, when she opened her eyes, she would be staring at them. At first, she was scared to death, but now, she was used to waking up early, and there were a few more on the bed. Little Hai and the three little ones, who were strolling in the courtyard, suddenly felt a cold gaze fall on them. They shivered all over. Turan, build a kennel in the courtyard for them to live in. Xiao Su said calmly. If they didn't want to pretend to be dogs, then they could continue pretending. Little Hai and the others had sharp ears. When they heard this, they immediately ran to Chu Qingyan's side to protest. Chu Qingyan didn't think that there was anything wrong with Big Ice Cube's words. Her family's big yellow dog used to sleep outside as well. However, when Little Hai and the others looked at her pitifully, Chu Qingyan's heart softened. She couldn't help but turn around to plead for them. A large hand landed on her head, and then she heard the sound of jade hitting stone. Ian, do you still want to bicker with me over such a small matter? Yan's name was so intimate that it made her heart melt. The two of them were so close that their breaths were intertwined. Her body stiffened, and the last syllable of Yan's name made her swallow her pleading words. I'll listen to you. Only the heavens knew how difficult it was for her to say those 4 words. Little Hai and the others knew that the situation was hopeless. Their master had been seduced by her beauty. She was more important than pets. On the side, Mr. Chu glanced at the two of them from time to time. There was a smug look in his eyes. It seemed that all his efforts had finally paid off. He had to hurry back and tell Dan Yang that he was going to have a grandson soon. Oh, no, it was a maternal grandson. Chu Qingyan didn't notice her father's happy expression. She wanted to turn around and move away from Big Ice Cube. She didn't know why, but whenever Big Ice Cube got close to her, she would lose her ability to think. Could it be that she was really seduced by his beauty? Unexpectedly, when she turned around, something fell out of her sleeve. It slowly floated down and landed by Xiao Su's feet. Xiao Su bent down to pick it up. When he glanced at the cover, his eyes froze. Chu Qingyan also noticed that the envelope had fallen. When she saw Big Ice Cube pick it up, she couldn't help but smile. This is a letter from the capital. I haven't opened it yet. Yes, I know. Xiao Su's voice was deep. It was impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. Chu Qingyan was surprised. You know where this letter came from? Wasn't it sent directly to Jean Xian? Big Ice Cube shouldn't know. Xiao Su nodded. I recognize this handwriting. Chu Qingyan was even more surprised. Big Ice Cube could even recognize handwriting. There were so many people in the capital, but he could recognize them at a glance. Didn't that mean that he had a photographic memory? Then who sent it? She was curious. Big Ice Cube actually knew the person who sent her the letter. The displeasure that had surged in his heart just now slowly faded when he saw her adoring gaze and her calm demeanor. Fourth Imperial Brother. She blinked. Xiao Ran. After not seeing him for more than 4 years, he actually wrote her a letter. Chu Qingyan was surprised and happy. She originally thought that he had forgotten about her. She didn't have many friends, but Xiao Ran was one. Jean Xian said that it was sent to Liancheng, but I wasn't here. The servant sent it here. Big ice cube, quickly open it and see what Xiao Ran wrote inside. Chu Qingyan cheerfully walked to his side with an expectant expression. Xiao Su's heart was upset at this time. When he first came to Liancheng, he would still receive letters from Fourth Imperial Brother. However, it might be that Consort Yu deliberately stopped him, so Fourth Imperial Brother didn't send him any more letters. He didn't take it to heart. But now that he saw the letter in his hand, he thought of Fourth Imperial Brother's gaze every time he saw the little fellow. He couldn't help but frown. You guys often write to each other? Chapter 707. Frequent exchange of letters. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but roll her eyes. If they were frequent exchanges, how could she not recognize him? But looking at the big ice cube's unhappy expression, Chu Qingyan didn't know where she had stepped on a minefield. She looked at him cautiously. Could it be that the big ice cube was jealous that Xiao Ran contacted her and didn't write to him? No, this is the first time I've received a letter from him. Chu Qingyan immediately clarified. Xiao Su nodded. She didn't look like she was lying. Are you very happy to receive a letter from him? Not noticing his locked gaze, Chu Qingyan answered honestly, of course, I haven't seen him in a long time. I don't know what he looks like now. He was still a young boy back then, but he should have grown taller now. He will definitely be able to charm thousands of girls in the capital. After all, your royal family has good genes, and every one of you is a young talent. Xiao Su glanced at her. I've never heard of him. He was young and handsome, but when he grew up, he became disabled. Chu Qingyan choked. These words were true, but it was strange coming from the big ice cube's mouth. Moreover, the person he was talking about was his younger brother. Chu Qingyan urged him to open it quickly. Then, she clasped her hands behind her back and looked at it with him. As they spoke, Xiao Su had already opened the letter. Chu Qingyan looked at the title. Qingyan girl, this sounded quite intimate. However, her impression of Xiao Ran was still that little Shota, so she felt a bit indignant. He was clearly more childish than her. Just as she was cursing in her heart, she felt the atmosphere around her suddenly become a bit eerie. Why was this spring night so cold? Then, she saw a handsome face that was as black as the bottom of a pot magnify in front of her. What was wrong with the big ice cube? Back then, did Fourth Imperial Brother plan to keep you in the capital? Chu Qingyan was surprised. How did you know? However, the person in front of her did not reply. She blinked. Could it be that the letter mentioned it? I think he was just fooling around back then. Consort Yu sees you as a thorn in her side. Why would I run into a fire pit? Chu Qingyan felt that something was wrong with Big Ice Cube. She quickly tried to distance herself from him. However, her words seemed to add fuel to the fire. So, if it weren't for Consort Yu, you might have stayed with him? Chu Qingyan frowned. What was the ice cube talking about? Big Ice Cube, are you in a bad mood today? Was that why he was venting his anger on her? Seeing the emotions on the little fellow's face, Xiao Su knew that he had spoken too harshly, but at this moment, he could not restrain his sudden anger. See for yourself. Xiao Su placed the letter in her hand, then left with a flick of his sleeves. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Hey, Big Ice Cube, aren't you staying for dinner? Didn't you originally plan to eat alone? As soon as he finished speaking, he had already disappeared from the courtyard. Looking at the empty courtyard, Chu Qingyan was a little confused. Did she offend Big Ice Cube? She turned to Xining and asked, what's wrong with His Highness? This servant also doesn't know. Maybe he's angry that 4th Imperial Prince wrote you a letter. Xining, who had been watching from the side, pursed her lips and snickered. Chu Qingyan was dumbfounded. This isn't something that I can decide. It's not up to me to decide who Xiao Ran wrote to. Does Big Ice Cube have a brother complex? When Xining heard that her master had misunderstood her words, she couldn't help but slap her forehead. Her master was really too stupid. It was no wonder that His Highness, who had always been patient with her master, couldn't hold himself back. Although Xining was the same age as her master, compared the two of them, she was enlightened about the relationship between men and women earlier than her master. She was a little worried about Big Ice Cube getting angry for no reason, but she still finished reading the letter in her hand first. She had only seen the beginning of the letter just now. Opening the letter, Chu Qingyan read 10 lines at a glance. The more she read, the more shocked she became. Qingyan, we haven't seen each other for more than 4 years. Have you missed me? Perhaps you have already forgotten about me. Far away from the capital, you should be living a carefree and lively life. Back then, I should have insisted on keeping you here. Once we parted, more than 1,000 days and nights have passed. Originally, at the beginning of spring, I planned to go to Fuli mountain range to look for you, but I didn't expect that something would happen at the border. After a delay, it was already April. I'm no longer that reckless youth. The current me can already shoulder the heavy burden of the country, so I took the initiative to volunteer. Imperial Father has already approved, so when you see this letter, I might already be on my way to the battlefield. If I can come back alive, I hope you can give me a chance. Eldest Imperial Brother's natural disposition is dull. You've been by his side for so many years, so I reckon that you'll feel very bored. If I succeed in my career, I'll ask Imperial Father to cancel the engagement between you and Eldest Imperial Brother and set the two of you free. At that time, the two of you were bound by this marriage and were unwillingly tied together. If I don't come back, then don't forget about Xiao Ran, who poisoned and injured you time and time again. Xiao Ran. Chu Qingyan's fingertips trembled. Was Xiao Ran writing a suicide note? It was fine if he didn't write, but when he did, it was shocking. Although she wanted to tell him that she was in love with Big Ice Cube, she was still touched by his concern before he left the army. His handwriting was elegant, much better than hers. When she was young, her grandfather had told her that one could recognize people by looking at their handwriting. This handwriting was neither good nor bad, neither dry nor smooth. It wasn't hard for her to imagine that Xiao Ran had already grown up and was no longer an impatient youth. She calculated that he should be 16 or 17 this year. Wait, Chu Qingyan suddenly understood what Big Ice Cube had said just now. So Big Ice Cube was jealous? She was shocked by her own thoughts, but she quickly became complacent. It seemed like Big Ice Cube cared about her a lot. But now was not the time to be happy. Chu Qingyan put away the letter and said to Xining, "Tell the kitchen to move the food to His Highness's room. I won't be eating here tonight." Xining looked at her master who was walking out in a hurry. She pursed her lips and smiled, walking towards the kitchen. Late at night in the Imperial Palace, a cool breeze blew. The Imperial Guards patrolled back and forth. Inside the palace, only the sound of armor clashing and heavy military boots landing on the ground could be heard. It was very quiet. A wall separated the noble and ordinary. One side was quiet, and the other side was lively. This was the night Xiao Ran wrote this letter a few days ago. The cold wind blew in from the window, blowing up the gauze curtain. The chill lingered in the hall. There was ink left on the inkstone, and a piece of white paper on the table was still wet. It was just lying there. And a handsome figure was leaning against the window, looking in the direction of the rich mountains. His white fingertips tapped on the windowsill, and a heavy but clear sound sounded in the night. In the past, he didn't know the taste of lovesickness. Now that he missed someone to the bone, he knew that it was so bitter. "Qingyan girl, I have thought about the scene of us meeting many times, but it is only a thought. After this farewell, if you are at the end of your road, I will protect you in the next life. If you are rich and noble, I will protect you in this life. Looking at the crescent moon in the night sky, he smiled, confident and arrogant. Qing Yan, wait for me to come back. I won't make you wait for too long. Chapter 708. Xiao Su returned to the study. Looking at the silence in the room, he suddenly realized what depression was. This was an emotion that he had never felt in the past 20 years. He covered his eyes with one hand to block the light and pondered quietly. He already knew from the little fellow's reaction that there was nothing between her and Xiao Ran. However, the bad feeling in his heart made his emotions fluctuate intensely. That was why he was cold to the little fellow. But if he didn't turn around and leave in time, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to resist taking the little fellow into his arms and fiercely rubbing her into his veins. Today, he had just revealed his feelings to her, and it had already given her enough shock. If he were to rush for quick success, he was afraid that the gains would not make up for the losses. He had never done a losing deal. But this feeling was really prickly. When did Xiao Ran, this fellow, fall in love with the little fellow? Why didn't he notice it at all? If he didn't see his own feelings clearly, perhaps he wouldn't understand his feelings for the little fellow in the letter. Being openly poached under his nose, Xiao Su's eyes flashed with a trace of shrewdness. Was his corner so easy to touch? After the door was knocked, Turin came in. Master, there are 7 or 8 people who want to seek refuge with you this month. They want to work under you. Turin reported. How many have joined us in the past 3 months? Currently, there are 37 or 38 people. Because of Xiao Su's achievements in the Lianqing area, his reputation had spread far and wide. Coupled with his status, he had attracted a lot of people to seek refuge with him. These people were mostly down-and-out scholars who had failed to achieve scholarly honors in the imperial examinations, or people who were used to traveling between countries, or people who simply wanted to make a living. In short, there were good and bad people mixed together. Xiao Su put down his hand. The emotions on his face had already disappeared. He looked cold as he pondered. The 2 countries were at war. Regardless of winning or losing, he had to make plans for the future. Therefore, he had to fill his side with talented people. Talented people were the foundation of prosperity. First, let Water's spirit investigate these people's identities and eliminate a group of people. Then, according to their abilities, we'll eliminate them again. In 3 days, this prince wants to get the confirmed name list. Xiao Su said coldly. Will the last person who stays be personally tested by you, master? The earth spirit first responded, then raised a question. The reason why Turin had this question was because in the past 4 years, many people had sought refuge with the master. However, the number of people who had passed the master's inspection could be counted on one's fingers. The master's requirements were very strict, but the master's judgment of people was very accurate. He was simply the existence of a 1,000-mile horse. Yes, I hope there are a few outstanding talents this time. Xiao Su nodded in agreement. The 2 of them then discussed other business matters. Just as they finished talking, there was a knock on the door. From the sound of the footsteps, it seems that the little princess has arrived. Then, this subordinate will disturb you and the little princess. This subordinate will take his leave first. Turin was very tactful and retreated. The fierce cavalry had already spread the news of his master's actions towards the little princess consort. It seemed like his master and the little princess consort were about to have a happy occasion. Perhaps they would have a little master soon, so he didn't want to be an eyesore to the 2 masters here. How could Xiao Su not know what this subordinate was thinking? However, he was in a good mood. Chu Qingyan and Turin brushed past each other, but she didn't miss the meaningful look on his face. She was a little confused. Big Ice Cube, Chu Qingyan called softly to the person who was leaning against the back of the chair with his eyes closed. Xiao Su didn't open his eyes. His tone was very indifferent. What's the matter? Can't I come to find you if there's nothing? Why is he still so cold? He's probably still angry. Pretend, I'll let you pretend. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but curse in her heart. Xiao Su chose to ignore her. Thus, Chu Qingyan touched here and there in the room. From time to time, she would say a few words. And the person opposite her would respond to her indifferently. In the end, Chu Qingyan was defeated. She was soft-hearted and couldn't stand his "you've wronged me" look. Xiao Su couldn't hear her and was a little confused. But very quickly, he knew what she was doing. A pair of hands softly rested on his shoulders. Then, a subtle fragrance attacked him. Xiao Su instantly opened his eyes. The picturesque face in front of him entered his eyes. He saw that she was half bent, her fingers interlocked behind his neck. Her long hair hung down and the ends of her hair curved into a black arc on his knees. Her bright eyes and white teeth were very pitiful. She was the most beautiful. At the end of the darkness, she was in the light, smiling sweetly. There was only room for her in his eyes. That was all. While Xiao Su was in a daze, Chu Qingyan asked a little apprehensively, "Big Ice Cube, are you still angry?" Her clear voice called back his soul. He found his voice again. Angry? Why? She gave him a way out, but the big ice cube asked her back. Moreover, his attitude was so cold that she couldn't stand it. She no longer cared about his manly dignity and glared at him. "Don't tell me you're not jealous of Xiao Ran." Black hair, red clothes, red lips, white teeth, and angry eyes. Xiao Su's heart skipped a beat. He quickly reached out and grabbed the hand that she was about to retract. Then, he pulled it towards himself. Chu Qingyan didn't expect him to catch her off guard. She lost her balance and sat on his lap. In order to prevent herself from falling, she couldn't help but hug him. She raised her head and wanted to blame him, but met with those thin lips that were waiting for her. When the two softness touched, the two of them felt a ripple in their hearts. A faint light gathered in his eyes, but it quickly scattered into the depths of his eyes and darkened bit by bit. He went straight in and sucked on her tongue, not allowing her to retreat. It was as if he was venting. When lovers communicated with each other than the contact of their eyes and the connection of their hearts, it was more about the touch of their bodies. That was the simplest and most direct way to convey their emotions. Yes, I'm jealous. I don't like it when someone affects your emotions in a way that I don't know. But I'm mostly blaming myself. I know that you don't like him, but I still take my anger out on you. Perhaps this is what it means to fall deeper and deeper into one's own hands. When feelings are strong, even the sun, moon, and stars will be an eyesore to you. Their lips and teeth were locked in a battle. It was only a moment, but the strong feelings of love and sweetness were already stirred up. Her lips and tongue were numb from his bite, and she mistakenly thought that he was going to swallow her. But in the end, he stopped his attack and wrapped around her. The warmth and tenderness made her a little confused. She could faintly feel his thoughts and couldn't help but relax her body and lean against him. Sensing her obedience, Xiao Su didn't hesitate to enjoy the beauty's tacit consent. Although he had already done it, so what? The stars had already stood firm in the night sky, generously releasing their light. The moonlight poured into the courtyard and the tall trees blocked the light. The light fell through the dense foliage. The light and shadow fell on the two people tightly hugging each other, creating an indescribable charm. Chapter 709. Inside the door, the spring breeze was moving. Outside the door, the wind blew and the leaves rustled. Xining walked into the yard with the kitchen staff. Seeing Turan standing under the tree, she couldn't help but smile and greet, "Darren Turan. You want to send food to the two masters?" Turan turned and smiled. "Yes, Mistress said that she was going to eat with His Highness tonight. I just asked the kitchen and His Highness hasn't eaten yet." Xining answered both questions and answers. They had seen Xining's growth in the past few years. She had been an unremarkable little girl in the King of England's Fu. After following the young Wang Fei, she had lost her immaturity and naivety. She knew how to act appropriately and smoothly. Now, she was a capable woman who could manage the affairs of a Fu. Turan couldn't help but admire the young Wang Fei's ability to manage people. It wasn't just Xining. There was also Jin Xian and Yang Xiaohuan. They had all slowly turned into butterflies under the young Wang Fei's hands. Then Xining will send the food to His Highness's room now. Xining curtsied and prepared to walk forward. Turan spoke to stop her. Right now, it might not be convenient for the two masters. Why don't you have someone go down and heat up the food before sending it up? Xining was puzzled, but when she recalled how hurried her mistress had been when she left, she immediately nodded and then ordered people to return to the kitchen. Separated by a door, the two of them separated while panting. Chu Qingyan was weakly nestled in his arms as she gasped for air. All the air in her lungs had been squeezed out by him. At this time, she was like a fish that hadn't been in water for a long time and was extremely thirsty. Xiao Su leaned back in the chair and gently stroked her hair, his expression extremely languid. His face, which was usually as white as porcelain, was stained with a faint blush after the lingering passion just now. His lips were faintly stained with water, and his eyes, which had always been tense, relaxed. The faint light outside the window fell into his eyes, swaying with the wind, and a gentle and warm color floated away. She inadvertently raised her head and saw this scene. If it was so beautiful, it would incur the wrath of both men and gods. Because of her shyness, she had never looked at him as boldly as she did now. It turned out that after being intimate with him, he was actually so stunning. She suddenly had the thought of monopolizing this beautiful scenery, not allowing others to peep at it. But just as she thought of it, she was shocked by her own tyranny. When did she become such a selfish person? But soon, she gave herself an answer. Liking someone was selfish. No matter if it was a person's frown or smile, or whether it was happiness, anger, sorrow, or joy, or whether it was now or in the future, she only wanted him to be with her. Perhaps it was at this moment that she finally understood why Big Ice Cube was unhappy when he saw Xiao Rant's letter. This was probably how she felt at the moment. Just as she was about to say something, someone else spoke first. I don't know about jealousy, but I know that when I saw the letter, I felt a surge of jealousy in my heart. His voice was a little deep and hoarse, but when it sounded in her ears, it inadvertently carried a faint seduction. But before she could taste his voice, Chu Qingyan was shocked. It wasn't because he was jealous, but because he was so calm with her. In the past, I had never experienced the 7 emotions and 6 desires, but now I've experienced them all because of you. Ian, what should I do with you in the future? He sighed helplessly, but there was a kind of willing relief. To be able to fall into someone's hands, it was better than drifting alone in the empty world. He had accepted his fate. He had accepted his fate because of a person. Then he would gladly endure it, be happy for her, be angry for her, be sad for her, be happy for her, be sad for her, be happy for her, be pitiful for her, be loved by her. Happiness, anger, sorrow, joy, pity, love. These words were like surging waves that fiercely hit her heart. If it was someone else who had said these words to her, perhaps she wouldn't have such a strong emotional fluctuation. Because the person who had said this was Xiao Su. He was a person who treated his enemies like winter and had never been soft-hearted to himself. Now he was willing to open his heart and lay out his weakest side in front of her. How could she not be moved? This kind of heaven's favored son, a person who had climbed through the fire, a person who had never compromised in his life, was deeply in love with her. How could she not be moved? To have Xiao Su's heart was her fortune of 3 lifetimes. At this moment, she had the idea of being with him for the rest of her life. To share life and death, to share sorrow and joy. At this time, words were already useless. Only actions could express her feelings. She once again placed her hand on his chest and sincerely offered herself. Their entangled lips still had each other's breath, but now it was impossible to tell who was who. Xiao Su was a little surprised by her initiative, but there was nothing more moving than her slightly trembling eyebrows. He leaned over and deepened the kiss. It was less passionate than before, but more gentle. This was the person he cherished in the palm of his hand. When the dishes were placed on the table, Xining saw the strange red on her master's cheeks. She was a little confused, but under His Highness's orders, she obediently led the servants away and closed the door. Xiao Su picked up his chopsticks and smiled at the person beside him. They've already left. If you bury them, are you prepared to be an ostrich? At this time, Chu Qingyan was about to bury her head in the bowl. The scene from before flashed in front of her eyes. She was a little regretful. Why did she take the initiative? Where was her shame? Where was her shame? She wanted to cry but had no tears. Also, the big ice cube had mercilessly exposed her. It really made her angry. Didn't he know that girls were easily embarrassed? But she knew what kind of person the big ice cube was. She took a deep breath and then raised her head to eat. After being tossed around for so long, she had no energy and her stomach was growling. Cough, cough. When the big ice cube heard her stomach growl, he couldn't help but laugh. Only then did he stop the two of them from becoming more and more passionate. Her face unconsciously turned red again. She coughed lightly to cover it up. When she was eating, there was an extra piece of sweet and sour pork in her bowl. She blinked and looked at him. Eat more meat to nourish yourself. When I carried you just now, you were too light. Xiao Su remembered that when he held her just now, she wasn't even enough for him to carry with one hand. Although the little fellow's meat was very comfortable to pinch, he still felt that it was a mistake to put on some weight. Cough, cough. Chu Qingyan choked on her food when she heard his words. Xiao Su didn't have the slightest awareness that he was the one who caused it. He freed a hand and patted her back. Did I say something wrong? Eat more, it'll feel better. When he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan coughed even harder. After the incident with Xiao Ran, the big ice cube didn't mention it again. Chu Qingyan was very puzzled. In the end, she couldn't help but ask. She only heard Xiao Su's answer. Back then, I couldn't control my emotions because you were being targeted. Later, I thought about it. My eye-in is good enough. How can I stop others from admiring you? So to me, the most important thing is that as long as you are by my side, so what if other people are in the limelight? Chapter 7:10. When she woke up in the morning, Chu Qingyan refused to get up from the warm quilt. Recalling how the two of them treated each other so honestly yesterday, her face flushed again, and she couldn't help but roll around on the bed with the quilt. Suddenly, she bumped into something soft, and her lost sharpness instantly returned to her. Chu Qingyan jumped up, only to find out what that soft lump was. And it wasn't just one lump, but 4. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she stared at the 4 big eyes. In the end, she was defeated by their pitiful gazes. Half sitting on the bed, she stretched out her hand and smiled. Come here, all of you. So the 3 little ones jumped over happily, while Little Trouble pretended to be reserved and walked over elegantly. Then, she stepped on the brocade quilt and fell face down, making Chu Qingyan laugh. She knew that these 4 little ones wouldn't behave and wouldn't obediently sleep in the doghouse that Big Eyes had prepared for them. Then, under the 4 little ones' accusing eyes, she couldn't help laughing, saying how miserable the doghouse was and how it wasn't worthy of their noble temperament. A happy day began again. Although the bet with Hua Xiu had been fulfilled, Chu Qingyan still appeared at Hibiscus Pavilion, because the goods would arrive in a few days, and she had to inspect the market first. And she was still a little surprised to see Higashio Motetsu in Hibiscus Pavilion. What brings you here? She felt that someone like him who was responsible for a family business shouldn't be leisurely, so why was he loitering in front of her all the time? Higashio Motetsu looked at the person in front of him and waved his paper fan. From your tone, it sounds like I'm very idle. At this time, Chu Qingyan finally noticed the tiredness in his tone. She carefully observed his face and found that there were dark circles under his eyes. Her teasing from before was swept away, and she asked with concern, "Why do you look so listless?" "It's nothing. I just took care of some business." He closed his fan and smiled. Then, he looked at her playfully. Are you worried about me? Yesterday, the Moon Palace had caught a traitor, and he had come out to clean up the traitor. Because the traitor held a high position, he had to make the traitor spit out what they had. Therefore, he had not touched the ground for the entire day. He had worked until the middle of the night to finish the job. It was already very difficult for him to be able to appear here today. However, there was no need for him to explain these things to her, because he knew that she would not like him mentioning the Moon Palace gate. Chu Qingyan snapped, "Nonsense, aren't we friends?" Higashio Motetsu wasn't very satisfied with her answer, but he didn't probe further. He looked at her suspiciously. "Did something good happen when I wasn't around yesterday? Why do I feel like you're flying?" Chu Qingyan was slightly stunned. Was this person a dog? Why was his nose so sensitive? However, she immediately steadied her fluttering footsteps. How could she tell him about her and the big ice cube? Therefore, she chose to tell him about yesterday's incident. "I won a bet with Xiao Li, and we signed the contract yesterday to confirm our partnership. Once my goods are on the shelves and I'm successful, I'll be able to take you flying." These words came from the bottom of his heart. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. Although Higashio Motetsu was still a little doubtful, he still believed most of it. "Congratulations, Big Boss Chu. Looks like this young master has found a big thigh. When you're rich in the future, don't forget this young master's help." Higashio Motetsu didn't stand on ceremony with her. He congratulated her and teased her. Chu Qingyan said casually, "Well said, well said." Hua Xiaoli also came early in the morning. When he saw the two people in the shop, he smiled and said, "You two are so early." Chu Qingyan smiled and said, "The early bird gets the worm." Higashio Motetsu continued, "But the early worm gets eaten by the bird." Chu Qingyan glared at him, "It's so early in the morning and you're opposing me." "I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare." Higashio Motetsu didn't sincerely beg for mercy. Chu Qingyan didn't bicker with him. She pulled Hua Xiaoli into the cabinet and told her about her intention to understand Jiangnan's skincare market. Hua Xiaoli expressed that she was very happy that her partner wanted to understand this. This could lay a long-term foundation for their future prosperity. As a result, the two of them began to discuss in detail. Higashio Motetsu listened at the start, but in the end, he leaned on his fan to catch up on sleep. Time passed bit by bit like this. When the two of them finished their discussion, it was already noon. Hua Xiaoli invited the two of them to eat and the three of them left the cabinet. At this time, Chu Qingyan and Hualing bumped into each other. "Hualing, what are you doing here?" Chu Qingyan was surprised. "Little young master, look. Who is this?" Hualing smiled mysteriously. He took a step to the side and revealed the person behind him. Chu Qingyan was a bit puzzled when she heard this, but when she saw the person behind him exposed in front of her, she couldn't help but be stunned. Until that person broke into laughter and said, "What? We haven't seen each other for a long time and you've been captivated by my beautiful appearance again?" The person in front of her was as bright and beautiful as before. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile with her. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming back so suddenly?" Her tone carried a bit of complaint, but it was more of the joy of reunion. The woman in front of her was wearing a light yellow dress. It was none other than Cheng Yenluo who had gone back to deal with the medical center that day. "Since I've finished dealing with the matter, I might as well come back." Cheng Yenluo's voice was as cheerful as before. She raised her hand to pinch the person in front of her face, feeling that it was getting better and better. Chu Qingyan didn't care about her actions at first, but when she felt the ambiguous gazes of the passers-by, she suddenly realized that she was currently wearing men's clothing. She immediately waved her hand and reminded her, "Pay attention to the situation." Cheng Yenluo shrugged indifferently. Chu Qingyan still couldn't hide her excitement from meeting an old friend, but she didn't forget to introduce her to the people around her. "This is my good friend Cheng Yenluo. She's a doctor." Then she introduced her to Cheng Yenluo. "This is Hua Xiaoli, the young master of the Hua family. He's also our future partner. This is Higashio Motetsu." He's just a loafer, so you don't have to pay too much attention to him. After saying that, her head was knocked by someone. Then she heard Higashio Motetsu say, "Qing Yen, don't speak nonsense. Be careful not to block this brother's luck with women." Cheng Yenluo and Hua Xiuli both laughed. Chu Qingyan didn't know what to do with him. She turned around and asked, "How did you find this place when you came back today? Weren't you going to rest in the bank first?" Cheng Yenluo put her hands on her hips and scolded, "Isn't it all your fault? I just came back and hadn't even warmed my seat when your big ice cube sent someone to tell me that you needed samples and asked me to bring them to you. Then I was brought here in a daze. I don't care, you have to compensate me." Huo Ling, who was standing at the side, had an expression that said, "I'm just following orders. Don't let the fire burn me." Chu Qingyan was very happy to hear that. "You actually brought the samples with you?" The surprise came too suddenly. "Yes, I brought a few bottles with me before I left." Cheng Yenluo felt that ever since she met the two of them, she had to admit that she was unlucky. Although she complained, she still took out a few bottles from her sleeve and handed them to Chu Qingyan. After Chu Qingyan took them, she turned around and said cheerfully to Hua Xiuli, "Xiuli, this is what we're working on. There are too many people here, so let's go to the shop and take a look." Chapter 711. Chu Qingyan didn't expect that she would be able to see the goods that would take more than 10 days to arrive today. The group of people entered the cabinet again. "Although my employees aren't very capable, their character can still be trusted." Seeing Chu Qingyan looking around warily, Hua Xiu immediately understood her concerns and said generously, "Let's go." Chu Qingyan smiled when she heard that. She really spared no effort to belittle her servants. She had seen the abilities of the employees of Hibiscus Pavilion in the past 2 days, and they were pretty good. However, she knew that Hua Xiu wanted to reassure her. She nodded and took out a few small bottles. "This is Shueishin lipstick." Actually, rather than bottles, it was more like 2 small bamboo tubes. Yes, this was the lipstick that Chu Qingyan took out at the Lan Manor trade back then. Because Hua Xiu already knew about Shueishin lipstick, Chu Qingyan explained, Shueishin lipstick can moisturize the lips and maintain their luster. It can fight against dry weather. For example, during autumn and winter, it can be used to protect our lips. Although it's spring now, having a sparkling and moist lips is a requirement that every woman wants to achieve. What about Shueishin lipstick? Although she had heard of it before, when Hua Xiu saw the small white pillar that gradually revealed the cream, she felt the blood in her body boil. Shueishin lipstick is used to moisturize the lipstick. It's equivalent to the rouge that women use now to make their lips red. However, rouge tends to fade easily. If you put on Shueishin lipstick and Shueishin lipstick, it won't fade easily even when you eat or drink tea. Most rouge is scarlet and the color is very monotonous. But Shueishin lipstick is different. It can be red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and various colors. Of course, very few people use yellow, green, blue, but there are many types of red and pink. For example, peach, crimson, dark red, crimson, vermilion, purplish red, pink, and so on. As long as there are colors in the world, there's no need to worry that they can't be mixed. Moreover, these colors are mixed with flowers and plants. They are natural and non-irritating, so there's no need to worry about whether they will cause harm to the human body. When Chu Qingyan said these, there was a confident smile on her face, which made Higashio Motetsu at the side look absent-minded. As the saying goes, everyone loves beauty. After listening to Chu Qingyan's introduction, Hua Xiu's eyes sparkled with red hearts. No wonder the lady boss of White Sparrow Brothel likes this item so much and spent so much effort to find you. It's really a good item. I can already imagine how big of a sensation it would cause if we put it on the market. She felt like she was looking at money. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh at her words. It was as if she could see the broad road spreading before her eyes. I've already told you that your design will amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Cheng Yenluo was very happy to hear that. I can already imagine the scene of women in Jiangnan rushing to get their hands on it. Little girl, let me congratulate you in advance for showing off your skills and amazing the world with a single brilliant feat. Higashio Motetsu put away his fan and cupped his hands in greeting with a smile on his face. Chu Qingyan scratched her head, a little embarrassed. This is just a sample. If we want to mass produce it, we'll need to recruit people to buy the materials. This is a big project. If we want to put it on the market, it'll take at least a month or two. Everyone was pulled back to reality by Chu Qingyan's words. Hua Xiu was a little disappointed, but she knew that more haste, less speed. She comforted Chu Qingyan by saying, "We don't have to rush. Fine work comes out of slow work. Go back and plan it well. If you need help, just let me know." Chu Qingyan nodded gratefully. It seemed that the partner she had chosen was quite reliable. Just then, a servant ran in, panting, "Young master, bad news. Young Master Biao has caused trouble again." The corner of Hua Xiu's mouth twitched. What kind of trouble had this guy caused her again? Seeing that Hua Xiu had family matters to attend to, Chu Qingyan and the others asked her to go back first. "I'm sorry, I'll take my leave first." Hua Xiu sighed, then cupped her hands and turned to leave with the servant. Seeing that Qing Yanluo looked exhausted, Chu Qingyan didn't stay any longer. After bidding farewell to Higashio Motetsu, she boarded the carriage with Qing Yanluo and left. Watching the carriage gradually disappear into the distance, Higashio Motetsu tapped his folding fan against his palm. He didn't leave immediately. "Young palace master, you didn't come here for anything. Why don't you stay in your room and rest? You haven't had a good night's sleep for a day or two." Xuanqi Zimo stood behind him and couldn't help but complain, his voice full of worry. Higashio Motetsu retracted his gaze and walked back. "Haven't you heard of this saying? Why sleep for so long when you're alive, but sleep forever after you die?" Xuanqi Zimo scratched his head. But he didn't say that she didn't need to sleep. Higashio Motetsu didn't pay attention to his conflicted subordinate. His expression was as calm as a spring breeze. The little girl seemed a little different today, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was different about her. Thinking back to that night when they were drinking, his eyelids twitched. He didn't know if he had succeeded in misleading her, but he felt uncomfortable whenever he thought about how the little girl would end up with Xiao Su in the end. However, he didn't forget the little girl's identity. Was she the consort of the King of England? His gaze turned cold. At that moment, Chu Qingyan and Qing Yanluo were already on their way back. "Tell me honestly. How did you manage to hook up with those two handsome men while I was away? Aren't you afraid that your family's vinegar jar will turn on you?" Qing Yanluo's tiredness was swept away. She was half lying on the carriage as she interrogated her. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. "What are you talking about? Don't falsely accuse me. Am I wrong?" Qing Yanluo didn't believe her. Chu Qingyan shook her head. "It's not a man in a flowery sleeve. A man dressed as a woman." Qing Yanluo was surprised. After receiving Chu Qingyan's affirmation, she said in disbelief, "He's already outstanding enough when he's dressed as a man. If he's dressed as a woman, wouldn't he be even more stunning?" At this point, Qing Yanluo rolled her eyes. No wonder that Higashio Motetsu's looks are so devilishly handsome. "I've been suspecting that he's a woman for a long time." Chu Qingyan burst out laughing. "It's a woman in a flowery sleeve, but Higashio Motetsu is a man through and through. Don't spout nonsense. If he hears you, you'll be in serious trouble. He's a vengeful person." It was undeniable that Higashio Motetsu was more attractive than a woman. When they first met, she really thought that he was a woman. Qing Yanluo shook her head and sighed. "Comparisons are odious." Chu Qingyan couldn't help retorting, "You make it sound like you're worthless." Qing Yanluo glanced at her. "I haven't settled the score with you yet. To tell you the truth, I originally wanted to take a good rest after dealing with the medical center, but that man of yours summoned me here. I thought something had happened to you, but it turns out it's because of your business. Tell me honestly, how far have you progressed with your man? Chapter 7:12. Chu Qingyan's mind went blank at her sudden question. She was speechless. Why was this person still so stubborn even after being away for so long? She wanted to laugh it off, but this person in front of her didn't seem to have any intention of letting her off. I'll be lenient if you confess, but I'll punish you severely if you resist. Cheng Yenluo was just casually teasing her, but she didn't expect her face to turn red as soon as she finished speaking. It seemed like there was a chance. Cheng Yenluo immediately went up to her, not allowing her to escape. Chu Qingyan raised her hands in surrender. Fine, fine, fine. I'll confess honestly. Go ahead. Cheng Yenluo narrowed her eyes and smiled slyly. Chu Qingyan braced herself and briefly told her what Big Ice Cube had said to her that night. Of course, she avoided the intimate parts. After listening to her, Cheng Yenluo's eyes lit up. Not bad. I thought your husband was a block of wood, but he's actually a two-faced one. He'll make a move when he needs to. You're going to be of marriageable age soon, so he should be anxious. Chu Qingyan's face turned even redder. She gave Cheng Yenluo a little push and said, "What nonsense are you spouting?" I'm not spouting nonsense. Think about it, you've been betrothed for so long. It's time to break the ice. If you keep dragging it out, outsiders like us will be anxious for you. Cheng Yenluo smacked her lips. She looked at Chu Qingyan as though she didn't know what was good for her. We're not anxious. Why are you so anxious? Oh. The eunuch is more anxious than the emperor. How did you answer him? I told you, don't agree so easily. Otherwise, you won't be able to show off your status. There are no good men. If you get them too easily, you won't cherish them. Cheng Yenluo raised her eyebrows. I didn't agree to him. I said I'd test him. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but recall her initiative last night. She lowered her head and pursed her lips. Did Big Ice Cube take it that she had agreed? Then wouldn't she be selling herself? Cheng Yenluo did not notice the change in her expression. It's good that you can think that way. I'm just afraid that you'll be too impulsive. Although it's important for two people to love each other, the key is to know how to manage it. Fate is just a bridge between two people. In the future, the most important thing in life is firewood, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea. If you're brainless and only think about romance, you'll probably starve to death. Chu Qingyan blinked in admiration as she listened to Cheng Yenluo's lecture. However, she refused to admit it. We haven't reached that stage yet. You're digressing. What do you mean far? You're the one who said that dating without the purpose of marriage is a hooligan. Don't tell me that you want to be a hooligan. I didn't expect you to have this kind of character. Today, you've exposed yourself. Cheng Yenluo deliberately twisted her words and made her blush. Then, she held her stomach and burst into laughter. Little girl, I've been rushing here for so many days thanks to your Big Ice Cube. If I don't get some interest back today, how can I live up to her nickname of Little Yama? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. You only know how to talk about me. What about yourself? Don't tell me that you've already gotten married with Ethereal. Is that why you're here to teach me? Quick, tell me about your journey. As Chu Qingyan spoke, her gaze locked onto Gu Ruoyun, not missing any reaction from her. She had always been concerned about Yen Luo and Kongling's relationship. The two of them had been tormenting each other for at least 10 years. Why hadn't they reconciled yet? This was really making the onlookers anxious. It was rare for Big Ice Cube to send Ethereal to chase after her. She guessed that many things must have happened along the way. If not for the fact that Ethereal was not in front of her, she would not be so anxious to ask her. As expected, Cheng Yenluo's expression changed the moment she opened her mouth. What are you talking about? Cheng Yenluo looked away and narrowed her eyes. Her tone was indifferent as she said, "He's him and I'm me. No matter how much time has passed, we can't become two of us." Her tone was so indifferent. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. It seemed that Ethereal's pursuit of his wife had failed again. "All right, go ahead and do whatever you want. Life doesn't last 100 years. Let's see how many decades you have left." Chu Qingyan snorted. Cheng Yenluo stiffened and didn't say anything. The two of them were silent for a moment. Cheng Yenluo took the initiative to break the heavy atmosphere. "By the way, you've reached an agreement with the Hua family. What about our goods? We'll need a lot of manpower and resources. We don't have that much money on hand." Upon hearing this, Chu Qingyan's expression turned serious. "I've also considered this problem. Most of our raw materials are extracted from flowers and plants. That's why the land in Lian City is wide and fertile. We didn't plant much before, but it's enough for the first production. Our top priority now is to recruit workers and teach them how to extract the ingredients. I've saved some money. If it's not enough, we can borrow some from our sleeves and use it to make up for the profits when the time comes." Cheng Yenluo nodded as she listened. Although the little girl's words were clear and logical, she couldn't help but laugh in the end. "After saying so much, aren't you going to ask your man for help? I believe that as long as you ask, there's nothing he can't do. Don't think that big ice cube is all talk and no action. He'll feel pressured. Besides, we're not really together yet. If we rely on him so early, people will laugh at us." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but retort. Oh, you're already in love. I think it's not that you don't want to rely on him, but that you don't want to be the weaker party in this relationship. You want to rely on your own efforts to produce results for him to see." Cheng Yenluo sneered. Chu Qingyan snorted and didn't deny it. "It's one thing to like someone, but one must also be independent. Only then can we support each other. One day, when one party falls, there's still the other party to rely on. Only then can we live a long life." Cheng Yenluo couldn't help but nod. "You're very self-aware. It seems that you're ready to be the King of England's concubine. Also, you admitted that you like Xiaosu. You can't deny it. I heard it. Don't be shy." Chu Qingyan cursed inwardly. She had accidentally blurted out her inner thoughts. "You can pretend that you didn't hear it," she said stubbornly. Big Ice Cube hadn't even heard her admit that she liked him, but Cheng Yenluo had heard it. What a pity. The car had already arrived at the entrance of the bank. Cheng Yenluo patted her shoulder and said, "Although what you said makes sense, sometimes men also hope that their women can show them a softer side. After all, men are all male chauvinistic." After saying that, Cheng Yenluo jumped out of the car, leaving Chu Qingyan alone in the car to mull over it. After taking a few steps, Cheng Yenluo couldn't help but stop. Looking at the gorgeous sunlight on the horizon, there was a trace of confusion in her eyes. How many decades did she have to squander in her life? She had known him for more than 10 years. Every memory that she could recall had a shadow of him. She smiled, leaving traces of a fallen leaf in the wind. Chapter 713. Because of Cheng Yenluo and Ethereal's return, the bank became livelier. Among them, Mr. Chu was the happiest. Everyone gathered together, and Chu Qingyan had already instructed the kitchen to prepare a table full of sumptuous dishes to welcome the two of them. It was a good time, good wine, and delicious food. The hall was filled with joy and harmony, as though it had not been this lively in a long time. At this moment, Mr. Chu held a glass of fruit wine and said to Ethereal, "Kong Tong, our Kai Kai and Shalat are about to have a happy ending. Have you and little Yama come to fruition?" As soon as he said this, Ethereal looked embarrassed. Cheng Yenluo didn't look too good either. Chu Qingyan spat out the hot soup in her mouth. However, Xiaosu calmly patted her back to calm her down. The atmosphere at the table suddenly became a little strange. Because it was a welcoming banquet, Wu Ling, Turin, and Jean Xin were all at the table. They were also curious about Ethereal and Chen Yenluo's relationship, but they didn't ask because of the occasion. Unexpectedly, the outspoken Mr. Chu asked everyone's question. This was because they all knew the reason why Chen Yenluo left Lian City. They also knew why Ethereal followed her. However, today's outcome didn't seem to be satisfactory. Thus, everyone lowered their heads and ate quietly. In fact, they were all listening attentively to their surroundings, not wanting to miss anything. Mr. Chu didn't seem to notice the strange atmosphere. He was still staring at Ethereal like a stubborn child who couldn't get his hands on candy. At this moment, Ethereal was holding the wine glass tightly in her hand. Her expression couldn't be seen clearly with her lowered eyes. Chu Qingyan saw that the situation wasn't good. Just as she was about to say something to resolve the situation, the sound of a chair sliding across the floor was heard. Everyone's attention was drawn to Chen Yenluo, who suddenly stood up. "I'm full. I'll take my leave first. You guys continue." With that, Chen Yenluo turned and left. Her expression was calm, and no one could tell what she was thinking. After Chen Yenluo left, everyone looked at each other in confusion. "Ethereal, what's going on between you and Miss Yenluo? It's been so long, but why is it still the same? There's no progress at all." Huoling couldn't help but ask. Ethereal drank a glass of wine, his face paling. "Don't ask. That's all." As soon as she finished speaking, Mr. Chu slapped Ethereal hard across the face. Ethereal was so shocked that she didn't even have the time to react. Mr. Chu had already turned his wrist. He must have hit her hard. Blowing on his palm, he said resentfully, "No ambition, no perseverance, no ability, no charm." Ethereal gulped down a few mouthfuls of wine after hearing Chu Machen's scolding. He admitted that Chu Machen was scolding him, but he hated himself for being powerless. When Chu Qingyan saw the dejected look on Ethereal's face, she couldn't help but reprimand her father, telling him to stop pressuring Ethereal. It was only then that Chu Qingyan's father hugged the wine pot and angrily drank from it, indicating that he didn't want to bother with Ethereal anymore. The welcoming banquet didn't go as planned. When Ethereal stepped into the courtyard, he heard someone calling out to him from behind. When he turned around, the dejected look on his face had already disappeared. He bowed respectfully and greeted, "Young master." Chu Qingyan strolled in front of him and sized him up. She suddenly realized that the elegant and graceful young master she had met for the first time at the King of England's residence was now a little bleak and not as high-spirited as he had been back then. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but feel that love could not only rejuvenate a person's spirit, but it could also make a person depressed. It was both a poison and an antidote. Chu Qingyan suddenly missed Ethereal, who couldn't stand her appearance, but had no choice but to obey his master's orders to save her. "Do you have time to chat?" Chu Qingyan invited. Ethereal could roughly guess her intentions. He hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Sure." Chu Qingyan stood under the parasol tree in the courtyard. She turned around and looked at him with a serious expression. "Ethereal, how long have you known Yenluo?" Ethereal was silent for a moment before he answered, 14 years. "That's so long." Chu Qingyan suddenly sighed. "So you should know her character very well." Ethereal hesitated for a moment. "More or less. Then as a bystander, I know all the problems she's struggling with." "Why do you pretend to be ignorant?" "As the saying goes, whoever started the trouble should end it. She refuses to accept you because she doesn't think she's important enough in your heart. She's afraid that she'll leave you one day for other reasons." She saw the pained expression on Ethereal's face. She sighed softly and continued, "Ethereal, isn't honesty and trust the most important thing when two people are together? If you can't even give her the most basic trust, how can she trust you with her future?" Ethereal was aware of Yenluo's troubles, but he always avoided them and was unwilling to face them head-on. That was why Yenluo treated him so coldly. Deep love always stopped at the lips. "Young master, as a valiant knight, we always remember to prioritize the safety of our master's orders. We only exist because of our master. Our master has treated us so well. We can't forget the vow we made back then because of our personal feelings. Ethereal's tone was firm. Chu Qingyan really wanted to kick him. Why are you so stubborn? Loyalty and love can't be mixed together. Ethereal pursed his lips and didn't dare to refute. Chu Qingyan looked at him and knew that no matter how angry she was, she would only be angering herself. She took a deep breath and said, since you haven't thought it through, don't annoy her for the time being. Otherwise, you'll only push her further away. She looked at him seriously. Ethereal, the two of you were together for 4 years, separated for 6 years, and then reunited for another 4 years. It's the past 4 years of love that has supported your feelings for her for the past 10 years. But you have to know that without reciprocation, even the most resolute heart will waver. I don't know how long Yenlua's feelings for you can last, but no one will walk down a path without hope. I believe you love her, but you have to think carefully about whether you can give her what she wants. Ethereal's body swayed, but he quickly regained his composure. Thank you for your advice, young master. I'll take my leave now. Chu Qingyan shook her head as she watched the handsome figure disappear from the courtyard. What a worrisome couple. They've been tormenting each other for almost 5 years. Are you scaring him? Just as she was lost in her thoughts, a voice suddenly sounded behind her. Chu Qingyan jumped in fright and turned to glare at the mysterious person. You're the one scaring me. Xiao Su smiled and didn't take offense at her rolling her eyes. It wasn't easy for me to groom a subordinate with outstanding medical skills. Don't scare him away with just a few words. So what if he's scared away? Isn't it better to make a marriage happen? If you're not convinced, bite me. Chu Qingyan snorted. She regretted it as soon as the words left her mouth, because she saw the light in his eyes. It seemed very familiar. Chapter 714. When that minty scent approached, Chu Qingyan felt like she had shot herself in the foot with regret. I was just saying, don't take it seriously, big ice cube. She forgot that she was standing under a tree. She hugged her head and took a step back, her back touching the tree trunk. No matter what, this location was really too convenient for doing bad things. Xiao Su just wanted to tease her just now, so that she wouldn't speak so carelessly. But when he saw her anxious face and bright red lips, his heart was moved. He reached out to support himself on both sides of her. His wide sleeves hung down, perfectly covering the person inside. The two of them were only separated by 2 layers of clothes. The spring clothes were cold and thin, and their chests were pressed against each other. 2 young hearts were beating quickly, and they could feel each other's heartbeats. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. She couldn't understand how the two of them became like this in the blink of an eye. She wanted to reach out to push him away, but her actions couldn't keep up with her thoughts. Thus, she was at a loss on the spot. He lowered his head and saw her panic. His lips lifted into a smile. I'm a person who likes to be serious. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Her hands had just rested on his chest, but before she could use any strength, she felt a warmth on her lips. She immediately froze, not knowing where to place her hands. And this action gave people a feeling of wanting to reject, but welcoming. Xiao Su held her in his arms and took over her territory. AI, it's daytime. She didn't know what to do after being bitten by him, but she was more worried about their situation. It was still okay in the room, but it was daytime in the courtyard. If someone saw them, she would have the heart to dig 3 feet into the ground. Wait, why did he say it was okay in the room? Was she bewitched by his beauty? Woo-woo, she was also depraved. While taking a breath, Xiao Su lightly exhaled. No one dares to look. After saying that, he lowered his head and sucked on her mouth, continuing what they were doing. Chu Qingyan's heart was like 10,000 horses galloping past. No one dares to look, which meant that what they were doing here would be known, but they didn't have the guts to stay and watch. Her reputation. As she thought of this, he pinched her waist. Don't get distracted. His hand was no longer as cold as before. It was warm as it landed on her waist. Her thin clothes couldn't stop the heat from invading her body. She could feel the heat spreading from her waist where he was holding, and it quickly spread to the rest of her body. She could already guess that her face was about to be cooked. Time passed bit by bit, and the sunlight danced on their clothes. One black and one red, the deepest darkness and the strongest brilliance. They were like the two most extreme sides of the world. Everyone thought that they were on opposite sides of the world, but they didn't know that when the two met, it would be the most dazzling sparks in the world. Spring was the time when all living things woke up. The trees sprouted, and the leaves of the parasol trees were dense and lush. The warm sunlight passed through the dense gaps and landed on the two people's clothes. The two of them were already peerless beauties that were hard to find in the mortal world. Looking from afar, the jumping spots of light were indistinct, as if they were a pair of celestial lovers under the celestial mountains of the 9 heavens. They didn't know how much time had passed by the time they left. Chu Qingyan leaned weakly on his chest. Her fingers grasped the front of his clothes, and she allowed his heavy breath to blow on her neck. Big ice cube. After a moment, she took the initiative to speak. His response was languid and satisfied. Are Ethereal and Yenluo stupid? Xiao Su was a little unhappy to hear the little fellow mention other people in their intimate space, but he still replied, we're not them. We won't understand their thoughts. You're not a fish, how can you know the happiness of a fish? She felt that Big Ice Cube's words made sense, so she nodded. To prevent her from mentioning other people, Xiao Su's nose rubbed against the soft flesh behind her ear. He asked casually, are you planning to plant materials in Lian City? Chu Qingyan was shocked. How did Big Ice Cube know? Previously, when she was fiddling with these things in Lian City, Big Ice Cube was busy with the matters of the fief. He didn't have time to care about her at all. She didn't deny it. The soil in Lian City is suitable for planting, and the area is vast. Plus, I'm familiar with the place, so I'm relieved. Xiao Su was silent for a while. Even Chu Qingyan didn't know what he was thinking. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain on her neck, followed by a warm breath on her head. She widened her eyes. Why did Big Ice Cube bite her for no reason? Are you not going to ask me for help? Xiao Su used his fingertips to rub the bite mark he had left behind. His mood was inexplicably good when he left his mark on her tender skin. Chu Qingyan was still in the shadow of being bitten on the neck. She hadn't recovered from her shock. Ask for help. You want to do what you like, whether it's doing business or making friends. But if you need help, I don't want you to shut me out. Xiao Su used a little strength in his arms and pulled her into his embrace. Chu Qingyan finally understood what he was referring to. Although her original intention was to be independent, and she did not want to rely on his strength, she still felt a little guilty after being poked at by the Big Ice Cube. I'm not shutting you out. I just don't want to leave you and not be able to do anything well. I don't want to be looked down upon and said that I can only succeed by relying on you. Who dares to say that? The threat was obvious. Chu Qingyan blushed with shame. That's not the point. The point is that I want to be independent and make a career for myself. I want to prove myself. You can also prove yourself by using my power. There's no conflict. Xiao Su couldn't understand her thoughts. She had a headache. She felt that she couldn't communicate with Big Ice Cube. Sensing the hesitation of the person in his arms, Xiao Su was silent for a moment. Then, he said, if you really want to be independent, it's not impossible. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. She continued to listen to him. If you're short on money, you can ask Jean Ling for it. Consider it as me joining you. If you earn money, I'll get a share. If you lose money, it's my bad taste. This, before she could say anything, Xiao Su continued. The forging in Fu Li mountain range no longer requires wood spirit's attention. I'll give him to you and let him help you cultivate your herb garden. You need manpower now, but it's not easy to recruit people in a short period of time. Training and eliminating people will take a lot of time and energy. He has a large group of ready-made people under him. They can get used to it quickly. Wood's spirit, who was far away in Lian City, sneezed heavily. He rubbed his nose. Who was talking bad about him behind his back? Chu Qingyan couldn't refute Xiao Su's words because he had already avoided what she was worried about. He had expressed very clearly that he was lending her manpower and resources. When she succeeded, she had to return them. Big Ice Cube, thank you, she said sincerely. Xiao Su smiled. He didn't respond to her words. Instead, he hugged her tightly and whispered in her ear. Ayan, I'm really looking forward to the day when you become of age. So, you have to grow up quickly. Why? I'm afraid that I can't wait to eat you up. At first, she couldn't understand what he meant. But soon, her face suddenly turned red. She blurted out, rogue. Then, she struggled out of his arms and ran away. The spring breeze was gentle. It wasn't just the corners of their clothes that were blowing, but two hearts that were getting closer and closer. Chapter 7:15. When she returned to her room, Chu Qingyan covered her red face and leaned against the door. She couldn't help but laugh when she recalled what Big Ice Cube had said under the tree. Big Ice Cube's advice was like a knife on a knife's edge. While she was still worrying about the lack of manpower, Big Ice Cube had already pushed Mu Ling and the others in front of her. It was as if someone had handed her a pillow when she was sleepy. Mu Ling and the others were top-notch experts who had been carefully trained by Big Ice Cube. If she could get their help, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. Big Ice Cube had also considered her financial problems and was willing to lend her as much as she wanted. In the past, Big Ice Cube would have asked her to take as much as she wanted. But now, Big Ice Cube was considerate of her feelings and respected her wishes. This made Chu Qingyan very moved. She had seen Big Ice Cube's feelings for her in the past few years. Then I'll reluctantly accept your kindness. I won't hold a grudge against you for biting me just now. She muttered to herself. Little did she know that this scene fell into the eyes of Little Annoyance and the others. They looked at their master in horror. What was their master doing? Chu Qingyan had just regained her senses when she met the eyes of one adult and three children. She immediately retracted the expression on her face, feeling as though her thoughts had been seen through. She coughed softly and turned to open the door. I'm going to take a look at Little Hai. Little Annoyance and the others looked at their master's back in confusion, then lowered their heads and went back to sleep. The weather was so good that it was suitable for sleeping. What a beautiful spring day. The gerfalcon's room wasn't far. It was just next door. When Chu Qingyan stepped in, Xining happened to be changing the water. Master! Xining called out, then put the basin in front of the gerfalcon. Although the gerfalcon had an entire room to itself, Chu Qingyan had ordered people to build a portable wooden hut for it to fit the environment it used to live in. She had even placed a lot of dry straw in the hut, and the gerfalcon was currently lying inside. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already walked to the wooden house. Is Little Hai awake? She asked. He woke up once this morning. Perhaps his injuries were too severe, so he didn't wake up after he fell asleep, Xining replied. Chu Qingyan nodded. He was already very lucky to be able to survive such a serious injury. When she turned around to face the cabin, the gerfalcon flapped its wings and slowly opened its eyes. Chu Qingyan was curious. What kind of existence was this legendary god of 10,000 eagles? Hence, she stared at it without blinking, and their gazes met. One was curious and expectant, while the other was disdainful and indifferent. Chu Qingyan smiled. What an intelligent animal. Even its eyes are filled with killing intent. Xining took a step back in fear. Mistress, this servant is just scared. Chu Qingyan patted her shoulder. It's injured, so it won't dare to do anything to you. If it's afraid, let Hua Ling arrange for someone to take care of it. Xining nodded in relief. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she didn't miss the flash of contempt in the gerfalcon's eyes. Stupid human. She couldn't help but find it funny. Xining was still frightened, so she raised her hand to stroke the gerfalcon's snow-white head. She revealed 2 rows of white teeth. Don't try to hide. You're still injured. Don't think that your threatening eyes will work on this young lady. Let me tell you, this young lady isn't scared. Although her words were arrogant, her actions were gentle. After all, the gerfalcon was still injured. The gerfalcon was angry, but it didn't dare to say anything. Who told it to be under someone else's control? Be good. Don't think about hurting people. Otherwise, I'll stew you. I haven't eaten eagle meat yet, so it must be delicious. Chu Qingyan snorted. Her tone was not polite at all. After being targeted, even if the gerfalcon used to be a tyrant in the sky, it had no choice but to lower its head now. A wise man submits to circumstances, so it understood. Chu Qingyan saw that it was no longer arrogant, so she patted its head as a reward. This gerfalcon knew when to yield and when to stand tall. She liked it. If you're obedient and don't cause any trouble, I'll have someone hunt a few rabbits for you. Hai Dongqing glanced at her arrogantly, as if to say, am I someone who can be bribed by a few rabbits? Then it closed its eyes again. You're really stubborn. It clearly wanted the gerfalcon, but it still put on a disdainful expression. Chu Qingyan shook her head. She felt that the gerfalcon had become a spirit. She withdrew her hand and smiled at the gerfalcon as if she was coaxing a child. I'll come visit you again when I have time. After saying this, she turned around and said a few words to Xining before leaving. The gerfalcon shrunk its neck. Who wants you to come visit? Chu Qingyan had already recovered from the intimate interaction between the two of them, so she had something important to do now. She turned around and went to the accounting room. Without needing to be announced, she entered Jin Ling's personal room. At this time, Jin Ling wasn't the only one in the room. Yang Xiaowan was also in the room. The two of them each took one side of the room and didn't disturb each other as they worked on their abacus. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but take a few more glances at this harmonious scene before speaking. Jin Ling, I have something important to discuss with you. Jin Ling looked up from his account book. He didn't look surprised at all. He stood up and stretched out his hand. Little Lord, please speak. I need a sum of money. The amount is about 50,000 yuan. Is there a problem? Chu Qingyan saw his reaction and went straight to the point. No problem. This subordinate will have someone prepare it right away. Just as Jin Ling was about to call for someone, Chu Qingyan stopped him. Wait a moment. Don't rush. Little Lord, do you have any other instructions? Jin Ling looked at her in confusion. Chu Qingyan picked up the tea and said with a serious expression, I won't take this money for free. You can charge me the same amount as the interest you charge others. You don't have to give me any special discounts. Jin Ling was stunned. This was different from what Master had said before. Just do as I say. Chu Qingyan obviously knew that Big Ice Cube had already told him about this. Her tone was firm. Jin Ling didn't say anything else. After settling this matter, Chu Qingyan turned to Yang Xiaowan and said, How's your learning from Jin Ling? Yang Xiaowan immediately replied, Jin Ling University has taught me very well. Xiaowan feels that I've learned enough. Good. I've told you about the cooperation with the Hua family before. Now I have a task for you. Go to Lian City personally. I'll teach you how to do it in the afternoon. Chu Qingyan felt that it was time for Xiaowan to be trained. Yes. Yang Xiaowan didn't expect that Master would ask her to do things for her so quickly. Jin Ling, on the other hand, was a little worried. Little Lord, Xiaowan hasn't been exposed to the world for long. Isn't it too fast? Chu Qingyan looked at Jin Ling suspiciously. Could it be that this fellow has taken a fancy to my Xiaowan? Jin Ling, have you been busy recently? Jin Ling immediately looked at her warily. Little lord, what's the matter? Since you're worried about Xiaohuan, you can come along too. Chu Qingyan said sinisterly. He could help Xiaohuan by her side. Chapter 7:16. When Chu Qingyan left the accounting room, she felt refreshed. Especially when she recalled Jin Ling's defeated expression, it was simply too satisfying. Although she no longer cared much about the bank's affairs, it was time for her to get back at Jin Ling for causing so much trouble for her in the past. It wasn't that she didn't bear grudges, but she would wait until the other party thought that it was safe to take revenge. However, it wasn't entirely out of selfishness, but because Big Ice Cube's businesses had been like this for a long time. After managing it for so long, Jin Ling's way of thinking was already fixed. She needed him to change his way of thinking. It wasn't that she doubted his ability, but it was always good to learn more. After all, there was no end to learning. She was thinking about where to go next. Suddenly, someone called out to her. She turned around and saw that it was Jin Ling, who had been rendered speechless by her earlier. What's wrong? Going back on your word? Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Jin Ling panicked. Little young master, don't misunderstand. This subordinate isn't going back on his word. This reaction, Chu Qingyan was even more certain that there was something fishy going on between him and Xiaohuan. She crossed her arms leisurely and asked calmly, what's that? Jin Ling had already regained his usual composure. Little young master, although the matter of the traitor has been over for some time, this subordinate still can't figure out one thing and would like to ask you about it. What is it? Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. When we first suspected that there was a traitor, you guessed that it was either Shi Qing or Li Buqing. How did you determine that it was both of them? After all, they did it so flawlessly. Jin Ling's face was still full of disbelief when he spoke of this matter. So that's what you're asking about? Chu Qingyan smiled. Actually, they did it so flawlessly that it made people suspicious. What do you mean? Jin Ling was puzzled. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. Do you still remember that the storeroom's lock requires 2 keys to open? Both of them said that they never lost their keys, and the 2 keys in your hands are also safe and sound. However, the lock requires 2 keys to open at the same time. Everyone knows about the wood spirit's abilities, so it's impossible for a traitor to develop a new key. So, unless the 2 of them work together, do you know why they're so unscrupulous and don't care about the consequences of being suspected? Chu Qingyan didn't wait for him to answer and answered her own question. That's because they thought they did it flawlessly and fooled everyone. No one would have thought that they would cooperate, because in the eyes of outsiders, they are mortal enemies and don't see eye to eye. Because the blind spot has already been created, they can rest easy. Jin Ling was enlightened. So that was how it was. Actually, what really made me suspect the 2 of them was the matter of the loan at Linyue restaurant. The 2 of them acted too aloof and didn't care about it at all. Moreover, they didn't tell you about the matter of me accepting bribes in the restaurant because if they told you, the deal wouldn't go through. Perhaps they didn't take me seriously, but their actions were enough to make people suspicious. If Jin Ling had taken the initiative to mention this matter, she was afraid that she would have forgotten about it. Therefore, she looked seriously at Jin Ling, who was deep in thought, and her tone became thought-provoking. Jin Ling, I know that the reason why you put these 2 people in important positions is because they don't see eye to eye with each other. You want to use this to restrict them and not let one side have the upper hand. But you're too obvious, and it's easy for people to take advantage of it. That's why Shi Qing and Li Buqing appear to be at loggerheads on the surface, but secretly work together. Jin Ling, if you have time, you can think about this saying. Don't doubt the person you use. With that, Chu Qingyan patted him on the shoulder and gave him an encouraging smile, then brushed past him and left. Jin Ling was shocked by the meaning of her words and woodenly turned to look at her leaving figure. The young princess was right. On the surface, he seemed to trust his subordinates, but in fact, he had always been on guard against them. That was why when Shirqing and Li Buqing appeared, he thought that he had a way to restrain them. However, he did not expect that it was a trap set by others. If it were not for the young princess, he was afraid that the money house would have suffered more losses. Perhaps, the way he used people was really wrong. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile. The people his master chose were really not normal. No wonder the arrogant Huo Ling and Turan submitted to her. He wasn't someone who didn't listen to advice. It seems that this trip to Lian City will allow me to learn many things. Jean Ling smiled. Chu Qingyan left the accounting room's courtyard. As she walked, she pondered what to do next. Suddenly, a large black shadow appeared in front of her. She unconsciously raised her head and saw the tall and straight Jiangnan fierce cavalry standing in a neat formation in front of her. What are you doing here? Is it a training exercise? Ever since they were convinced last time, Su Yi and the others followed her suggestion and trained themselves when they had nothing to do. So when they saw everyone lined up, they thought it was a training exercise. The leader, Su Yi, shook his head and said, "Little Gongzi, I heard that you plan to start a business in Jiangnan." Start a business? Good brat, he even heard what she said these past few days. Chu Qingyan nodded. Then can this subordinate follow you in the future? Su Yi asked in a careful tone. The moment he said this, the 20 over men behind him also said in unison, "This subordinate also wants to follow you." Chu Qingyan's jaw almost dropped in shock. Does your master know about this? Master has already agreed to it. Huo Ling appeared out of nowhere and said with a smile. Seeing so many pairs of eyes looking at her, Chu Qingyan felt that she needed to calm down. In the courtyard, Turan poured a cup of tea for his master in front of him and then asked, "Master, if you agree to the Jiangnan Fierce Cavalry's request, doesn't that mean you have to send a new group of people to the bank?" Xiao Su's tone was indifferent as he said, "They acknowledge Ayan's ability and are willing to work for her. This saves this prince the trouble of choosing another group of people to put by her side." Turan was shocked. So his master already had a plan. At this time, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Turan bowed and retreated. When Chu Qingyan entered the courtyard, she saw the person sitting at the stone table drinking tea. She immediately went forward and put her hands on the table, approaching him. "Big Ice Cube, you agreed to Su Yi's request? But they are your Shaolai cavalry." It sounded like she was carving up his men. The young girl's fragrance hit him in the face. Xiao Su raised his other hand that wasn't holding the cup and reached out to touch her cheek. His tone was neither fast nor slow as he said, "What's mine is yours, there's no need to bicker." "Then what's mine is still mine," Chu Qingyan blurted out. Xiao Su gave a low chuckle. His fingertips caressed her cheek and his voice was filled with endless pampering. "All right." Chu Qingyan felt like she was about to fall into his tenderness. Her face turned red and she wanted to retreat. "I'm lying to you, what's mine is also yours." Chapter 717. I lied to you. What's mine is also yours. After saying that, she turned to leave. But just as she had this thought, her hand was grabbed by a strong force, and she fell into a warm embrace. Before Chu Qingyan's mind was clear and she was overwhelmed by his gentleness, the first thought that came to her mind was, once she revealed her feelings, would lovers get intimate with each other when they had nothing to do? As long as the two of them were alone, they wouldn't talk but would kiss first. However, she was quickly conquered by him. She realized that he especially liked her neck and collarbone. Every time she was out of breath because of him, he liked to bite her skin there. Although he didn't bite very hard, it still hurt. She pushed him twice and said angrily, "Are you a dog? Grind my teeth." Xiao Su's 2 words made her unable to vent her anger. Although she looked cute when she was angry, Xiao Su couldn't bear to see her angry. He pinched her earlobe and stroked it gently. "Why don't you bite me back?" She looked embarrassed. "Who likes to bite you? Is that so?" Xiao Su looked at her meaningfully. "I remember that someone likes to bite people when they're sleeping. Do you know that person?" As soon as he said that, Chu Qingyan remembered that when they were setting up a tent in the wilderness, she didn't dare to sleep alone, so she ran over to squeeze with him. Then, she couldn't resist the temptation of his beauty and committed an irreversible mistake. Now, she was being used as a joke by him. Chu Qingyan covered her face. She was too ashamed to face anyone. Xiao Su chuckled and didn't continue to tease her. He pulled her into his arms and said, Su Yi and the rest have been traveling in Jiangnan for the past few years, so they're more familiar with the terrain and people here. I'm relieved to leave them to you. Seeing that he was getting down to business, Chu Qingyan took a few deep breaths and calmed herself down. Then, she said, so you're saying that you've been planning to transfer them away from here for a long time? Yes. Xiao Su played with her fingers and said faintly, they've changed a lot from their self-imposed exile to their current state of mind. It's all thanks to you. You're right. People who have been through hardships are more capable. They're more stable and determined than they were at their best. Therefore, it's a bit overkill to use them in the bank. But isn't it overkill to put them by my side? Aren't you afraid that I'll bury them? Chu Qingyan was shocked. Xiao Su pinched her fingers and raised the corner of his eyes. He looked at her with a different gaze. Then, do you know how to do it? I am being serious with you. Chu Qingyan glared at his fingers and said angrily. I'm not joking with you. Xiao Su smiled and held her hand. Then he said leisurely, I believe that you can give them a better future. This sentence ended the conversation between the two of them. Although Chu Qingyan wanted to continue asking, it was obvious that he didn't want to continue. Because what he wanted now was to fill his stomach. Chu Qingyan was kissed by him until she couldn't care about anything else. Sob, was kissing for no reason when they were in a relationship. But she had something to do. He was clearly looking for her for serious matters, but it ended up like this. She was furious. When they left, Chu Qingyan glared at him with watery eyes. Let me say this first. I haven't promised you yet. Don't keep getting touchy. Xiao Su watched her leave. He licked his lips and chuckled to himself. This didn't conflict. Walking out of the courtyard, Chu Qingyan was stopped by someone again. She had a headache. Why were there so many people looking for her today? When she turned around, she was surprised to see that it was Turan. Little Gongzi, the goods from Lian City have arrived in the front courtyard. Turan walked over and reported. What goods? Chu Qingyan was confused by his question. Some time ago, Master knew that you wanted to buy a property in Jiangnan, so he sent a messenger pigeon to Muling and asked him to send over the skincare products that you were researching. Turan smiled. When did this happen? Half a month ago. Chu Qingyan was shocked. Previously, she had produced a batch of Shuexin lipstick and other new products in Lian City. At that time, she had planned to make the products first and sell them later. This time, after she and Hua Xiuli succeeded, she wanted to ship the products over and sell them first. She didn't think that the big ice cube would rush her so quickly. Half a month ago, she was still dealing with the matters of the bank, but he had already prepared everything for her. A warm current filled her heart. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. Wasn't the big ice cube rumored to be a cold and emotionless person? Why did he always do things that made her feel warm? Little Gongzi, do you want to check the goods first? Turan saw that his little princess consort was distracted and couldn't help but remind her. Chu Qingyan came back to her senses and said excitedly, of course. With these goods, I can start selling them earlier. They came just in time. As she spoke, Chu Qingyan skipped towards the front courtyard. Turan shook his head and laughed before following her. It was spring in Jiangnan. The weather was good, the rain was light, and the wind was warm and comfortable. However, the weather in the capital, which was thousands of miles away, was not so mild. After 2 days of heavy rain, the entire capital was still covered in dark clouds. The wind was strong, and the fallen leaves mixed with sand and stones walked through the streets. The common people closed their doors and windows tightly and didn't dare to walk outside. It was still daytime, but it felt like night. Prince Yi's manor. Xiao Ho held the letter in his hand. The light and shadow reflected on his face, making it impossible to see his emotions. He dares to use those useless people to threaten me. His tone was calm, but there was a murderous intent hidden in it. The subordinate in front of him knelt on the ground. Master, the people we planted in the Jiangnan Bank were exposed. In addition, the stronghold we set up in Jiangnan in disguise was cleaned out. Almost all of them were captured by the King of England. Now they want to use these people to exchange for the money we swindled. Do you think that I'm blind and didn't see what was written in the letter? Xiao Ho's tone was cold. The subordinate lowered his head. Master, this subordinate knows that you don't like to hear this, but if you don't exchange with His Royal Highness, I'm afraid that your subordinates will be disappointed. Although they followed their master and vowed to follow him to death, if their master turned a blind eye to the safety of their companions, how many of them would be disappointed? Hearing this, Xiao Ho steadied his emotions. He knew too well what was at stake here, which was why he was so furious. He had planned for so many years, but he didn't want to be broken so easily. It wasn't easy to design and destroy most of Xiao Su's industry. Now, he caught the pain and bit back. Xiao Ho clenched his fists. He was unwilling. Send all the money back, as long as he guarantees that Shi Qing and the others are unharmed. Yes. Just like that, the letter in his hand turned into ashes. I didn't expect that after so many years, you could still grasp the weakness of human nature so accurately. I'm more and more looking forward to our game in the near future. A touch of bloodthirsty cruelty appeared on his elegant and handsome face. Chapter 718. Sure enough, all the products in Lian City had been delivered by Mu Ling. Chu Qingyan looked at the big boxes in front of her and was overjoyed. Xiaohuan, help me register these items first. Postpone my return to Lian City for a few days. She wanted to check on the sales before deciding on the time to return. Yang Xiaohuan hurriedly agreed. With the help of the servants, she carefully registered the items and didn't dare to be sloppy. Cheng Yanluo, who had heard the commotion, entered the courtyard and saw this scene. She teased and enviously, I didn't expect that your husband would always think of so many things for you. He's so considerate. Chu Qingyan chuckled. Of course. After speaking, Chu Qingyan glanced at her. I thought you went back to recuperate. I didn't expect you to appear here. Cheng Yanluo rolled her eyes at her. What? Are you looking for a fight? Let's see if you can beat me in a fight. Chu Qingyan saw that she had regained her essence energy and felt much more at ease. Thus, she continued to argue with her. Cheng Yanluo wasn't going to argue with someone who took advantage of her. She followed Chu Qingyan and checked the goods. She asked, with this batch of goods, you don't have to delay the release of the goods. Are you planning to sell them first? Chu Qingyan nodded. That's right. I want to check the market, but I have to advertise them first. She had helped Hibiscus Pavilion with so much publicity. There was no reason for her goods not to be advertised. Come. Help me register these goods today. I want to make a unique barcode to prevent people from impersonating my goods in the future. You're good at doing business. You even thought of this. Cheng Yanluo reached out and pinched her face. Then she turned to leave. I didn't come here to be ordered around by you. I want to go back and catch up on my sleep. But before she could take a step, she was stopped. She turned around and saw Chu Qingyan's sneaky expression. She had a bad premonition. As expected, as the saying goes, if you're frustrated in love, you'll be happy in wealth. Come, let's get busy so that you won't have time to think about those sad past. Think about it, these things in front of you will be shining silver in the future. The corners of Cheng Yanluo's mouth twitched. This person was indeed eloquent, but damn it, she was tempted. Who asked her to treat money as her life? I'm afraid of you, little ancestor. Qing Yanluo glared at her. She was becoming more and more like her husband, always able to grasp other people's shortcomings. Chu Qingyan agreed with a smile, which provoked Qing Yanluo to give her a good beating. He was busy for a whole day. The next morning, Chu Qingyan went to the side room to check on Hai Dongqing. Hai Dongqing was still as arrogant as ever. She then prepared to leave the house in high spirits. Just as she left her courtyard, she saw Huoling walk in front of her with a piece of paper. "Good morning, Huoling. Is something the matter?" Chu Qingyan asked in a good mood. Huoling nodded and handed the thing in his hand to her. "Little young master, this is the deed for a house." "Why are you giving this to me?" Chu Qingyan glanced at the words on the paper and was a little puzzled. Huoling explained with a smile, "Master thinks that since little young master wants to do business, you will need to entertain some business partners in the future. If you always stay outside in a tea house, it will be inconvenient." So, a few days ago, this subordinate bought a residence. Yesterday, the owner of the residence sent the deed over this morning. Master said to let you look over it first. Chu Qingyan looked at the deed in her hand and suddenly didn't know what to say. "Little young master, master has already gotten up and is practicing his sword in the courtyard." Huoling smiled mysteriously. Chu Qingyan was startled. She looked at Huoling and seeing his normal expression, she put away her suspicion and said with a nod, "I'll go find him now." Huoling nodded and then watched as the figure turned into another door. He rubbed his chin with a sly smile. He had obtained the deed yesterday, but he had delayed it until today to give it to the little princess. Because the little princess had been busy with business matters, it had been a long time since she had eaten breakfast with his master. Although his master did not say anything, as a loyal subordinate who wholeheartedly followed his master, it was his most important duty to solve his master's problems. That was why he had blocked the little princess's courtyard door early in the morning. After completing his task, Huoling walked towards the kitchen with large strides. He had been hungry all morning. Under the eaves, Jean Exan watched Huoling's departing figure and said to the person next to him, "The people under His Highness are all shrewd people." Xining didn't understand when she heard this. "How can you tell?" "That's why I say you're stupid." Jean Exan glanced at her with regret like he was playing the lute to a cow. Being disliked, Xining felt very hurt. So, she chased after the person in front of her and raised her fist to hit him. It was a pity that this bit of strength wasn't even enough to scratch an itch for him. When Chu Qingyan appeared in the courtyard, she happened to see a person brandishing a sword. Every move was sharp and clean. There was no sloppiness, but it was also natural and elegant. When he put away the sword, the leaves fell with a rustle. When they fell to the ground, they were cut in half neatly. Chu Qingyan stepped on the broken leaves as she walked in front of him. Then she waved the deed in her hand. "You had someone do this?" Xiao Su was dressed in casual clothes as he stood under a tree. His right hand was holding a brocade cloth as he wiped a long sword. Hearing her question, he casually glanced over and didn't deny it. "You don't like it?" "I quite like it. I just feel that I haven't really started to do business yet and you've already done so much for me. I don't even know how to repay you in the future." Chu Qingyan was a little vexed. It was like eating someone's mouth was soft, taking someone's hand was short. Although this person was a big ice cube, she wanted to be independent. "Then you don't have to repay me." Xiao Su sheathed his sword and looked at her with a smile. Chu Qingyan stomped her feet. "How can that be?" "Why not? In the future, I'll be yours." "What are these things worth?" This sentence successfully made Chu Qingyan lose the courage to continue speaking. This person was really becoming more and more, he was becoming more and more good at sweet talking. Chu Qingyan thought in embarrassment. Was it that every man's ability to sweet talk was innate? Otherwise, how could he become more and more skilled? After Xiao Su finished speaking, he turned and walked towards the room. He knew that the little fellow still needed some time to accept it, but she didn't say that if he wanted her to agree, he would need to undergo a test. Wasn't he just putting it into action? If Chu Qingyan knew what he was thinking, she would probably choke on a mouthful of blood. She was about to be eaten clean by him and he still had the nerve to say that he was pursuing her. What are you still standing there for? Hearing no movement behind him, Xiaosu turned around and looked at her with a frown. Ah. Chu Qingyan was a little confused and didn't react. You're not here for breakfast? Xiaosu said impatiently. I'm coming. Chu Qingyan put away the deed and immediately ran towards him. She was clearly here to thank him. How did she become a freeloader? Even after she finished eating, she still didn't understand why she had stayed behind in a daze.